They said the Duke of Blackthorn was a monster who lived in darkness. They said he'd break her before the month was out. Lyra Vale stood at the altar, hands trembling, sold like livestock by the stepmother who'd stolen everything, and now she belonged to a man who couldn't even see her face. But when Alistair Thornwick spoke his vows in that cold, precise voice, when his unseeing eyes turned toward her with unnerving accuracy, she realized something far more terrifying. He didn't need sight to destroy her. He just needed to exist. Will she survive in a world that wants her gone? Watch until the end to find out, and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. Hit that like button if you're ready for a story about a woman who refused to disappear. The carriage wheels ground through mud like bones cracking under boot heels. Rain hammered the roof in waves, each gust rocking the small compartment until Lyra thought she might vomit from more than just fear. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass, watching the countryside blur into shadow. 3 hours ago, she'd had a name, a home. Now she had a contract signed in her stepmother's looping script and a wedding dress that smelled like camphor and someone else's desperation. Stop fidgeting. The voice came from across the carriage. Mrs. Winters, her stepmother's most loyal hound, sat with her spine rigid as iron, eyes fixed on Lyra like she might bolt at any second. The older woman's mouth was a knife slash of disapproval. I wasn't... You were. You've been picking at that hem for the last hour. Do you want to arrive looking like a street urchin? Lyra's fingers stilled on the white silk. There was a loose thread near her knee, and she'd been worrying it without thinking. Old habit, the kind of thing her stepmother used to slap her hands for. It doesn't matter what I look like, Lyra said quietly. He can't see me anyway. Mrs. Winters' laugh was dry as kindling. Oh, child, you think that makes you safe? You think blindness makes a man less dangerous? She leaned forward, and Lyra caught the sour smell of the woman's breath. Let me tell you something about Duke Thornwick. 3 years ago, a servant tried to steal from him. Thought the blind Duke wouldn't notice a few missing candlesticks. They found that boy 2 days later, begging in the street with both hands broken. The Duke didn't need eyes to know exactly who'd wronged him. Said Lyra's stomach twisted. That's just a story. Is it? Mrs. Winters settled back into her seat. You'll find out soon enough. Your stepmother has given you a great gift securing this match. The least you can do is not embarrass her by getting yourself killed in the first week. A gift. The word tasted like ash. She sold me. She ensured your future. Without this marriage, you'd have nothing. Your father's estate is gone. Because she gambled it away. Lyra's voice cracked, louder than she'd intended. The anger had been building for months, ever since her father's death, ever since Caroline had taken control of everything and burned through the family fortune like it was kindling. Every penny he left me, every property, every... Watch your tongue. Mrs. Winters' eyes flashed. Your stepmother did what was necessary to save you from your own foolishness. A girl of 18 with more money than sense? You'd have been swindled within a year. This way, at least you'll have a title, a home, a prison. Call it what you like, you'll still be a duchess by morning. The carriage hit a rut, and Lyra's head cracked against the window frame. Stars burst behind her eyelids. When her vision cleared, she could see the lights of Blackthorn Estate in the distance. The manor rose from the hillside like something carved from the bones of the earth itself, all dark stone and sharp angles, windows blazing against the storm. Her new home, her cage. The gates opened without ceremony. No footmen rushed out to greet them. The carriage simply rolled to a stop beneath a stone portico that dripped with rain and moss, and Mrs. Winters was already gathering her skirts. Remember, the older woman said as she opened the door. You are here to provide an heir. That is your function. Do not make yourself a nuisance. Do not ask questions. And above all, do not presume that his blindness makes him weak. Men like Alistair Thornwick do not survive by being weak. Then she was gone, disappearing into the house like smoke. Lyra sat alone in this carriage for a long moment. Through the open door she could hear voices, servants probably, preparing for the ceremony. A wedding with no guests, no celebration, just a business transaction dressed up in white silk. She could run. The thought flickered through her mind like lightning, jump from the carriage, sprint into the storm, disappear into the countryside before anyone noticed. But where would she go? Caroline had made sure there was nothing left. No relatives who'd take her in, no friends who weren't already indebted to her stepmother's social circle. No money of her own. This was the only door left open. Lyra stepped out into the rain. Okay, The entrance hall was cavernous. That was her first thought. The second was that everything in Blackthorn Estate seemed designed to make a person feel small. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, supported by columns carved with thorns and ravens. Portraits lined the walls, generations of Thornwicks staring down with cold eyes and colder expressions. At the far end, a massive staircase split into two wings, and standing at its base, her breath caught. Duke Alistair Thornwick was not what she'd expected. The rumors had painted him as ancient, decrepit, a man twisted by bitterness and isolation. But the figure waiting for her was young, maybe 30 at most, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and a face that would have been handsome if it weren't so carefully blank. He wore black from collar to boots, stark against his pale skin, and his eyes, they were gray as winter ice, unfocused, fixed on a point just past her left shoulder, blind. Miss Vale. His voice was measured, controlled, the kind of voice that gave nothing away. Welcome to Blackthorn. She realized she was staring and forced herself to move forward. Her shoes echoed on the marble floor. When she was 3 feet away, he lifted one hand. Stop there. She froze. For a long moment, he simply stood motionless, listening. She could see his chest rise and fall beneath the severe cut of his coat, could see the slight tilt of his head as he processed, what? Her breathing, the rustle of her dress? You're smaller than I expected, he said finally. Lighter on your feet, nervous. Yes, I suppose I am. Don't be. Nervousness leads to mistakes, and I don't tolerate mistakes in my household. He turned without waiting for a response. The ceremony will begin in 1 hour. Mrs. Greaves will show you to your quarters. You'll have time to prepare. Wait. The word came out before she could stop it. He paused mid-stride, didn't turn around. Shouldn't we, I don't know, talk? Before we talk. He said it like the word was foreign. About what, precisely? About anything? Everything? We're about to be married, and you don't need to know me, Miss Vale, and I certainly don't need to know you. Now he did turn, and even though his eyes couldn't focus on her, she felt pinned by his attention. Let me make this simple. I require an heir, you require security, and a name that will protect you from whatever financial ruin your family has fallen into. Those are the terms. Everything else is unnecessary. The words hit like a slap. Lyra felt her face burn. I see, she managed. No, he said softly. You don't, but you will. He gestured to someone behind her. Mrs. Greaves, take her upstairs. A woman appeared at Lyra's elbow, older, stern-faced, with keys jangling at her belt. The housekeeper's grip was firm as she steered Lyra toward the stairs. This way, miss. Mind the third step. It creaks. Lyra glanced back once. The Duke had already turned away, one hand trailing along the wall as he navigated the familiar path through his own house. She watched him disappear down a corridor, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd mapped every inch of his world in darkness. I require an heir. Nothing more. The words echoed in her skull all the way up the stairs. Her room was beautiful. She hated it immediately. It was too large, too cold, too clearly designed for someone else. The bed was massive, canopied in deep green velvet. The windows overlooked gardens she couldn't quite see in the darkness. There was a writing desk, a wardrobe that probably cost more than her father's entire library, and a portrait above the fireplace, a woman with auburn hair and sad eyes. That was the late Duchess, Mrs. Greaves said, following her gaze. His mother, dead these 10 years. What happened to her? Fell down the stairs, broke her neck. The housekeeper moved to the wardrobe, pulling out a nightgown. Tragic accident. The Duke was only 20 when it happened. Some say that's when he truly went blind. Not from the fever that took his sight, but from grief. Lyra touched the edge of the writing desk. The wood was smooth, recently polished. Did he love her very much? That's not a question you should be asking. Mrs. Greaves's tone sharpened. And not one I'd answer if it were. Now, you have 45 minutes before the ceremony. There's water in the basin if you want to wash. The wedding dress is laid out. Do you need help with the buttons? No, I can manage. Good. Because no one here has time to coddle you, girl. This isn't a fairy tale. You're here to do a job, same as the rest of us. The housekeeper headed for the door, then paused. One more thing. The Duke's quarters are in the West Wing. You'll be summoned when you're needed. Until then, stay in this wing. Don't wander, don't ask questions, and don't go into the library after dark. Why not? Mrs. Greaves' expression flickered, something almost like pity. Because that's where he goes when he wants to be alone. And a man like the Duke? You don't want to see what he's like when his solitude is interrupted. Then she was gone, and Lyra was alone with a dead woman's portrait staring down at her. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded in her lap, and tried very hard not to cry. This was it. This was her life now. Married to a stranger who couldn't see her and didn't want to know her. Trapped in a house full of shadows and secrets, with a stepmother back in London probably already spending whatever bride price she'd negotiated. I require an heir. Nothing more. Lyra stood abruptly, crossed to the window and pressed her palms against the cold glass. Rain streaked down in rivulets, distorting the world beyond. She could barely make out the edge of the gardens, the dark line of trees beyond. Somewhere in this house was a man who'd learned to navigate without sight, who'd survived loss and isolation and God knew what else, who'd agreed to marry a woman he'd never met because he needed something from her. And she? She was the girl who'd been sold to him like livestock, but she wasn't going to break. That much she promised herself. Whatever happened in this marriage, whatever cold, clinical arrangement he wanted to make of it, she would survive. She would find a way to matter even if he never saw her, especially because he never would. The ceremony was brutal in its simplicity. No flowers, no music. Just a minister who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else, standing in what must have been a chapel but felt more like a crypt. The room was small, windowless, lit by candles that cast more shadow than light. Alistair was already waiting when she arrived, standing at the altar with his hands clasped behind his back. He'd changed into formal attire, still black, but with silver embroidery at the cuffs that caught the candlelight. His expression was as blank as before. "Begin," he said when she stopped beside him. The minister cleared his throat. "We are gathered here." "The short version," Alistair interrupted, "we both know why we're here." A pause. Then, "Very well. Do you, Alistair James Thornwick, Duke of Blackthorn, take this woman as your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Lyra Catherine Vale, take this man as your lawfully wedded husband?" Lyra's throat was dry as sand. She could feel Alistair beside her, tall and still as a grave marker, could hear his breathing, slow, controlled, completely calm, as if this meant nothing to him. Maybe it didn't. "I do," she whispered. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you man and wife." The minister snapped his book shut. "You may. Well, God bless you both." He left before Lyra could process what had happened, just turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing in the empty chapel. The door closed with a hollow thud. She was alone with her husband. Alistair turned toward her, not quite facing her, but close enough. "There's a dinner prepared in the east parlor. We'll eat, make an appearance for the sake of propriety, and then you'll return to your quarters. Tomorrow Mrs. Greaves will go over your duties as Duchess. You'll have control of the household accounts, the staff schedules, and any social obligations that require a hostess." "That's it?" Lyra couldn't keep the edge out of her voice. "That's all you have to say. What else is there?" "We just got married." "Yes, and now we're married. The legal requirements have been met. Was there something else you expected? Romance?" His lip curled slightly. "I'm not capable of that, Miss..." "Apologies. Duchess Thornwick. I thought your stepmother would have made that clear." "She made a lot of things clear. What she didn't mention was that I'd be marrying a statue." Silence. Then Alistair's expression shifted, just slightly, a crack in the mask. "Careful," he said softly. "You've been in this house for less than 2 hours, and already you think you understand me. That's a dangerous presumption. Then help me understand. Tell me something, anything, about who you are. Why? So you can feel better about this arrangement? So you can pretend we're something other than what we are." He moved closer, and Lyra's instinct was to step back, but she forced herself to hold her ground. "I'll save you the trouble. I'm a man who lost his sight at 17 and spent the next decade learning to survive in a world designed for the sighted. I have no patience for sentimentality, no interest in companionship, and no desire to know what you look like or what you dream about at night. You are here to continue my family line. That is the extent of our relationship. And if I refuse? The words came out before she could stop them. Alistair went very still. Refuse? To be just a broodmare. What if I want more than that? For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then he smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression she'd seen yet. Then you'll learn very quickly that what you want is irrelevant, he said. Welcome to Blackthorn, Duchess. I hope you survive it. He walked past her, one hand trailing along the wall, and disappeared into the corridor beyond. Lyra stood alone in the chapel, her wedding dress suddenly feeling like a shroud. She didn't go to dinner. Instead, she found her way back to her room and locked the door. Stripped out of the wedding dress and left it in a heap on the floor. Changed into the nightgown Mrs. Greaves had laid out, plain white cotton that smelled like lavender and made her feel like a ghost. Then she sat at the writing desk and stared at the blank paper in front of her. Who would she even write to? Her stepmother, who'd sold her? The friends who'd vanished the moment Caroline started spending her father's money? There was no one left. No one who cared whether she lived or died in this cold, dark house. A knock at the door made her jump. Duchess? Mrs. Greaves' voice. The Duke requests your presence. Lyra's stomach dropped. Now? Yes, now. He's waiting in his chambers. His chambers. Of course. The wedding night. She'd been so focused on surviving the ceremony that she hadn't let herself think about what came after. But Alistair had been clear. He required an heir. And an heir required... Her hands were shaking as she stood. I'll need a moment. You'll need to come now. The Duke doesn't like to be kept waiting. There was no warmth in the housekeeper's voice, no sympathy, just the cold efficiency of someone who'd seen this play out before and knew exactly how it would end. Lyra wrapped a robe around herself and followed Mrs. Greaves into the corridor. The walk to the West Wing felt like a death march. They passed through hallways lined with more portraits, more shadows. The house creaked and settled around them, and Lyra found herself counting her steps, anything to keep from thinking about what was waiting at the end of this journey. Mrs. Greaves stopped at a heavy oak door, knocked twice. Enter. The housekeeper pushed the door open and gestured for Lyra to go ahead. Then she left, her footsteps fading back down the hall, and Lyra was alone in the threshold of her husband's bedroom. It was darker here. A single lamp burned on the nightstand, casting long shadows across walls lined with bookshelves. The bed was massive, larger even than the one in her room, and Alistair was sitting on the edge of it, still fully dressed, his hands folded in his lap. He tilted his head when she entered. Close the door. She did. The lock clicked into place, loud as a gunshot. Come here. Lyra forced herself to move forward. Her bare feet were silent on the carpet. When she was close enough, Alistair reached out, not blindly, but with eerie precision, and caught her wrist. His grip was firm, not painful, but absolute. Do you understand what happens now? He asked. Yes. Good. Then we can proceed without unnecessary complications. He pulled her closer, and she could smell cedar and something darker beneath it. Smoke, maybe, or old leather. I won't hurt you more than necessary. This is a transaction. The faster we complete it, the faster you can return to your own quarters. Lyra's throat closed. She wanted to scream, wanted to rip her hand away and run back to her room and lock herself in forever. But where would that leave her? Still trapped? Still powerless? Still at the mercy of a man who saw her as nothing more than a means to an end? I require an heir, nothing more. No, she heard herself say. Alistair's grip tightened. What? I said no. The words came out stronger this time. I won't. I can't. Not like this. You don't have a choice. I do. I have this choice at least. You want an heir? Fine, but not tonight. Not when you can't even... Her voice broke. Not when you look at me like I'm a problem to solve instead of a person. For a long moment, Alistair didn't move. Then, slowly, he released her wrist. A person, he repeated. Is that what you think you are to me? I don't know what I am to you. You won't tell me anything. You won't... I'll tell you exactly what you are. His voice was cold as winter. You're the solution to a problem. The Thornwick line requires continuation, and I require a wife who can provide that without complication. Your stepmother was eager to be rid of you, and I needed someone who wouldn't ask questions or make demands. That's all this is. All it will ever be. Tears burned in Lyra's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Then you married the wrong woman. Because I will ask questions, and I will make demands. And if you think I'm going to spend the rest of my life being nothing more than breeding stock, you're mistaken. She expected rage, expected him to grab her again to force the issue. But Alistair just sat there, his unseeing eyes fixed somewhere past her shoulder, and after a moment he laughed. It was a terrible sound, bitter and sharp. "You have spirit," he said. "I'll give you that. It won't last, but it's interesting, for now." He stood, and Lyra had to fight the urge to back away. "Go back to your room, Duchess. We'll revisit this conversation when you've had time to understand your situation more clearly." "My situation is perfectly clear. Is it?" He moved past her, heading for the door, opened it with perfect precision despite the darkness. "You think you have power here because you can refuse me one night. You think that makes you brave." He paused in the doorway, his profile sharp in the lamplight. "But every day you don't give me what I need is another day closer to me finding a solution that doesn't require your cooperation. Think about that while you're alone in your comfortable room, eating food paid for by my estate, wearing clothes purchased with my money. You have nothing, Lyra. Nothing but what I allow you to have." Then he was gone. Lyra stood in the empty bedroom, her whole body shaking, and finally let the tears fall. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the house settle and creak around her. Every sound made her flinch. Every shadow looked like someone standing in the corner, watching. "You have nothing but what I allow you to have." He was right. That was the worst part. She was completely dependent on him for food, shelter, even the clothes on her back. And he knew it. He'd laid it out with brutal clarity, making sure she understood exactly how powerless she was. But he'd also let her leave. That thought kept circling back. He could have forced the issue, could have taken what he wanted regardless of her protests. Men did that all the time, especially to wives who had no legal recourse, no family to defend them. But Alistair had simply let her go. Why? Was it truly about control? About making her understand her place before proceeding? Or was there something else beneath that cold exterior? Some remnant of humanity that stopped him from crossing that particular line? Lyra rolled onto her side, pulling the blankets up to her chin. The room was freezing despite the fire in the hearth. Everything in this house was cold. Cold stone, cold floors, cold husband who spoke to her like she was a ledger entry. "I require an heir, nothing more." Fine. If that was all he wanted from her, then she'd find a way to make herself invaluable in other ways. He'd mentioned household accounts, staff schedules, social obligations. Those weren't nothing. They were responsibilities. Power, in a different form. If she couldn't be his equal as a wife, maybe she could become indispensable as a duchess. The thought crystallized as dawn broke through the windows. Lyra sat up, exhaustion pulling at her bones, but her mind was clearer than it had been since the carriage ride. She wasn't going to break. She wasn't going to disappear into the shadows of this house and let Alistair Thornwick treat her like furniture. She was going to survive. And if she was very lucky, if she played this correctly, she might do more than just survive. She might actually matter. Mrs. Greaves arrived at 7 o'clock sharp, carrying a breakfast tray and an expression that suggested she'd already heard about last night. "The Duke has requested you join him in his study at 9, the housekeeper said, setting the tray on the writing desk. "He'll be going over the estate ledgers with you. I suggest you eat quickly and dress appropriately." Appropriately how? Like a duchess, not a girl playing dress-up. Mrs. Greaves opened the wardrobe and pulled out a deep blue gown with severe lines and minimal ornamentation. "This should do. It was his mother's. You're about the same size." Lyra stared at the dress. "He wants me to wear his dead mother's clothes? He wants you to look the part. The dress is perfectly serviceable and saves the expense of a new wardrobe." The housekeeper laid it across the bed. "Unless you'd prefer to meet him in your nightgown." There was a challenge in her voice. A test. Lyra stood. "I'll wear the dress." "Good. I'll send a girl up to help with the buttons in 30 minutes. After Mrs. Greaves left, Lyra picked at the breakfast, toast and jam, tea that was already going cold. Her stomach was too knotted to eat much. She kept thinking about the study, about sitting across from Alistair and pretending last night hadn't happened. about navigating a conversation with a man who seemed determined to keep her at arm's length while simultaneously demanding she fulfill her wifely duties. Every day you don't give me what I need is another day closer to me finding a solution that doesn't require your cooperation. What did that mean? Would he truly cast her aside if she continued to refuse? Have the marriage annulled? Find someone more compliant? The thought should have brought relief. Instead, it made something twist in her chest, something that felt uncomfortably like determination. She wasn't going to be cast aside. Not again. Not after everything she'd already lost. The maid who came to help with the dress was young, maybe 16, with nervous hands and a tendency to avoid eye contact. She worked in silence, lacing Lyra into the gown with quick, practiced movements. When she finished, Lyra caught sight of herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The dress transformed her, made her look older, more severe, like someone who belonged in this cold, dark house, like a duchess. "His Grace is waiting in the study," the maid whispered. "Second floor, east wing, third door on the left." "Thank you." Lyra smoothed her skirts. "What's your name?" The girl blinked. "Annie, Your Grace." "Thank you, Annie." The walk to the study felt shorter than it should have. Lyra found the door and paused, her hand on the knob. She could hear movement inside, the rustle of paper, the scrape of a chair. He was already working. She knocked. "Enter." Alistair was seated behind a massive desk, his fingers moving across a page covered in what looked like raised dots. Braille. He didn't look up when she came in, just continued reading, his expression focused. "Sit," he said after a moment, gesturing to the chair across from him. Lyra sat. The chair was hard-backed and uncomfortable, probably by design. "I've had Mrs. Greaves prepare a summary of the household accounts," Alistair continued, still not lifting his head. "You'll need to familiarize yourself with current expenditures, staff salaries, and quarterly projections. There's also a list of upcoming social obligations that require a hostess. You'll attend those functions and represent the estate appropriately." He slid a stack of papers across the desk. Lyra caught them before they fell. "Is that all?" she asked. "For now." Finally, he leaned back in his chair, his unseen eyes fixed somewhere past her left shoulder. "Unless you have questions." "I have dozens of questions." "Make them brief." Lyra glanced down at the papers. The numbers swam before her eyes, pounds and shillings, expenditures and projections, a whole world of responsibility she'd never asked for. "Why me?" she said finally. "I beg your pardon? Why did you agree to this marriage? There must have been other options. Other women whose families wanted a connection to the Thornwick name. So why accept my stepmother's offer?" Alistair's expression didn't change. "Because your stepmother asked for less than the others." The words were a slap. Lyra felt her face burn. "I see. Do you? Good. Then we can move past the romantic delusions and focus on what actually matters." He pulled another document from the desk, this one also in Braille. "The harvest reports came in yesterday. Yields are down 12% from last year. I need you to review the tenant contracts and identify which farms are underperforming." "I don't know anything about farming." "Then learn. You have access to the library. Use it." He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "Mrs. Greaves will answer any questions about household management. For everything else, figure it out yourself. I don't have time to hold your hand through basic competency." Lyra stood as well, clutching the papers to her chest. "You really are exactly what they said you were." That made him pause. "And what's that?" "A monster." She expected anger. Instead, Alistair smiled. That same terrible smile from last night. "Good," he said softly. "Then you know what you're dealing with." Lyra turned and walked out before he could see her hands shaking. The library was her salvation. She found it that afternoon, tucked away in the north wing on the second floor. The room was enormous, 2 stories tall with shelves that climbed to the ceiling and a spiral staircase leading to a walkway above. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. It was the first warm space she'd found in Blackthorn. Lyra wandered the shelves, running her fingers along leather spines. There were hundreds of books here, thousands maybe. History, philosophy, agriculture, medicine. An entire section on estate management, another on law. And in the corner, barely visible behind a reading chair, a section on blindness. She pulled one of the volumes down. On the Education and Employment of the Blind, read the title, published 15 years ago. The pages were worn, annotated in tight, angular handwriting. Alistair's notes, probably. She flipped through, reading his comments in the margins. Impractical, patronizing nonsense. This assumes dependency. Incorrect. He'd been teaching himself, learning to navigate a world that wasn't built for him. And from the evidence in these books, he'd been doing it alone. Lyra replaced the volume and moved to the estate management section. If Alistair wanted her to learn about farming, fine. She'd learn. She'd learn everything. Every aspect of running this estate, managing the household, navigating the social obligations he clearly despised. She'd make herself indispensable. The first book she pulled was a treatise on crop rotation. Dense, technical, boring as hell. She settled into the reading chair and started working through it anyway. Hours passed. The sun moved across the windows. A maid came in at some point with tea and sandwiches, setting them down without a word. Lyra barely noticed. She was deep in a chapter on soil composition when she heard footsteps on the stairs. She looked up. Alistair stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame. He'd changed since this morning, or maybe he always wore black. His hair was disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. "I didn't realize you were here," he said. "Mrs. Greaves said the library was available." "It is. I just—" He trailed off, frowned. "You've been here for 5 hours. How did you— The servants report to me. They mentioned you hadn't left since lunch." He moved into the room with that same careful precision, his fingers trailing along the bookshelf nearest the door. "What are you doing?" Lyra held up the book. "Learning about crop rotation. You said to figure it out myself." For a moment, Alistair didn't respond. Then he crossed to the chair opposite hers and sat down. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that she could see the lines of exhaustion around his eyes. "That's Kellerman's work," he said. "Published in 1801. His theories on nitrogen fixation were revolutionary at the time, but they're outdated now. You want Morrison's modern agricultural practices. Third shelf from the top, east wall." Lyra stared at him. "You've memorized the library? I live here. What else am I supposed to do?" He leaned back, closing his eyes. "How far did you get?" Chapter 4, the part about legumes. Kellerman overemphasizes legumes. Morrison has a more balanced approach. A pause. "You should also read Henderson's Tenant Management. It'll help with the contract review I mentioned." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I'm not being helpful. I'm preventing you from wasting time on obsolete information." But his voice had lost some of its edge. He sounded tired. Just tired. Lyra set the book aside. "Can I ask you something?" "You're going to regardless." "Why do you hate this so much?" Alistair's eyes opened. "Hate what?" "All of it. The marriage, me, the idea of having someone else in your space." She gestured around the library. "This is the first time you've spoken to me like I'm not an inconvenience, and it's only because I'm doing something you care about. So what is it? What makes the thought of a wife so unbearable?" He was quiet for a long time, long enough that Lyra thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, "Because the last person I let close destroyed me." The words were barely above a whisper. Lyra had to lean forward to catch them. "What happened?" "That," Alistair said, standing abruptly, "is none of your concern. Learn what you need to learn, Duchess. But don't mistake functional conversation for intimacy. We're not friends. We're not companions. We're two people trapped in an arrangement neither of us wanted." He turned toward the door. "I'll have Morrison's book sent to your room." Then he was gone, leaving Lyra alone with the dust motes and the growing certainty that her husband was more than just cold. He was broken. And somewhere beneath that armor of ice and control was a man who'd been hurt badly enough to never want to feel anything again. Busket. 3 days passed in a blur of paperwork and silence. Lyra threw herself into learning the estate. She read Morrison's book cover to cover, made notes on tenant contracts, identified the 3 farms that were dragging down the overall yield. She met with Mrs. Greaves every morning to review household accounts and discovered that the estate was spending twice as much on candles as it should have been. "The suppliers have been overcharging for years," she told Alistair during their next meeting in the study. "I contacted 3 alternate vendors. We could cut costs by 30%. He looked up from his Braille documents, head tilted. "You renegotiated supplier contracts in 3 days? Is that a problem?" "No, it's—" He paused. "Efficient. It was the closest thing to a compliment she'd gotten. Lyra tried not to let it matter, but it did. She started attending to other aspects of the estate. The gardens were overgrown, the staff overworked and underpaid. There were leaks in the east wing that hadn't been repaired in months. The tenants were behind on rent, not because they couldn't pay, but because the collection system was disorganized chaos. Lyra fixed what she could, made lists of what she couldn't, started to understand the shape of Blackthorn. Not just the physical house, but the ecosystem of people and systems that kept it running. And every evening, she returned to the library. Sometimes Alistair was there, sometimes he wasn't. When he was, they maintained a careful distance, her in the reading chair, him at the desk near the window. They didn't speak much, but occasionally he'd make a comment about whatever book she was reading, and she'd respond, and for a few minutes it would feel almost normal. Almost like they were two people who might, someday, be able to stand each other. Then he'd leave, and the moment would shatter. On the fourth day, a letter arrived. Mrs. Greaves brought it to Lyra's room with breakfast, her expression grim. "This came by messenger this morning, from London." Lyra recognized the handwriting immediately. Caroline's looping, elegant script. She didn't want to open it, didn't want to read whatever poison her stepmother had decided to send, but ignoring it felt like weakness. She broke the seal. "Dearest Lyra, I hope this letter finds you well settled in your new home. I wanted to reach out personally to ensure you understand the fortunate position you now occupy. The Duke of Blackthorn is a man of considerable standing, despite his limitations. You would do well to remember that this marriage is a gift, one that many young women would have killed for. I've taken the liberty of informing our mutual acquaintances about your new circumstances. They're all quite envious, I assure you, though there have been some questions about the Duke's health and capabilities. I've done my best to deflect such inquiries, but you know how society talks. Do write soon and let me know how you're managing. And please don't forget to send word when you've successfully produced an heir. It would put so many concerns to rest. With love, Caroline." Lyra crumpled the letter in her fist. "Bad news?" Mrs. Greaves asked. "Just my stepmother reminding me why I left London." Lyra tossed the letter into the fire, watched it curl and blacken. "Have there been rumors about the Duke?" The housekeeper's expression went carefully blank. "There are always rumors about the Duke. He's blind, he's reclusive, he doesn't attend society functions. People talk." "What do they say?" "Nothing worth repeating." But Mrs. Greaves' hands were tight on the breakfast tray. "If you're asking whether the ton gossips about his marriage prospects and his ability to fulfill certain expectations, then yes, they do. They always have. His ability to fulfill certain expectations." Lyra's stomach turned. "They think he's incapable?" "They think a lot of things, most of them cruel." Mrs. Greaves set the tray down with a sharp click. "The Duke doesn't help matters by refusing to defend himself. He just lets them talk, lets them think whatever they want." "Why?" "Because he doesn't care what they think. He cares about this estate, about maintaining his family's legacy, and about being left alone. Everything else is noise." After the housekeeper left, Lyra sat at the writing desk and stared at her reflection in the window glass. She looked different now, thinner, maybe, more severe, like Blackthorn was carving her into something new. "They're all quite envious, I assure you." Caroline was already spinning the narrative, already turning this disaster of a marriage into social currency. And if Lyra didn't produce an heir quickly enough, her stepmother would start spreading different stories. Stories about Alistair's limitations. Stories that would damage his reputation and his family's standing. She couldn't let that happen. Not because she cared about Caroline's opinion, but because she was starting, just barely starting, to understand that Alistair's coldness wasn't cruelty. It was armor. Protection against a world that had judged him, dismissed him, and discarded him because of something he couldn't control. And she'd be damned if she'd let her stepmother add to that weight. But that night, Lyra walked to the West Wing without being summoned. It was late, past 11. The house was dark, most of the servants already in bed. She moved through the corridors by candlelight, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was insane, foolish. Alistair had made his position clear. He didn't want intimacy, didn't want connection. He wanted an heir, and nothing more. But if she didn't do this on her own terms, it would happen eventually on his, and she'd rather walk into the fire than be dragged. She knocked on his door. Silence. Then, "Who is it?" "Lyra." A longer pause. "It's late." "I know. Can I come in?" The door opened. Alistair stood there in shirt sleeves, his hair disheveled, a book in one hand. He looked younger like this, less like a duke and more like a man who'd been caught off guard. "What do you want?" he asked. Lyra stepped past him into the room. It looked the same as it had 4 nights ago, dark, lined with bookshelves, dominated by that massive bed. But now she noticed the details: the stack of Braille volumes on the nightstand, the worn chair by the fireplace, the way everything was precisely arranged, nothing out of place. His world, mapped in darkness. "I got a letter from my stepmother," she said. Alistair closed the door. And she's already spreading rumors. About you. About us. About whether or not this marriage is legitimate. Lyra turned to face him. "I won't let her do that to you." "How noble." His voice was flat. "But unnecessary. I've been the subject of rumors my entire adult life. One more won't make a difference. It will if she convinces society you're incapable of producing an heir." That got his attention. His expression hardened. "She wouldn't dare." "She already has. She as much as said it in the letter. And if I don't give her proof that this marriage is real, that we're—" Lyra's throat went tight. "She'll make sure everyone knows." Alistair moved to the fireplace, bracing one hand against the mantel. "So you're here out of spite, to prevent your stepmother from winning." "I'm here because I'm tired of being powerless." The words burst out louder than she'd intended. "I'm tired of people making decisions for me, about me, without asking what I want. My stepmother sold me to you like I was property. You treat me like a problem to be solved. And I'm done. I'm done letting other people dictate my life." "Then leave." "What?" Alistair turned to face her. "If you're so tired of being powerless, leave. Walk out that door. I won't stop you." Lyra stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely. The marriage can be annulled. You can return to London, find someone else, build whatever life you want. I won't stand in your way." "And lose everything? Again?" Lyra laughed, bitter. "No, I'm not going back to being nobody. If I'm going to be stuck in this marriage, I'm going to make it mean something." "Such as?" "Such as proving we're not a joke. Such as giving your tenants a Duchess who actually cares about their welfare. Such as—" She stepped closer. "Such as giving you what you need so my stepmother has no ammunition left." Alistair went very still. "You're offering yourself." "I'm offering a choice. We can do this your way, cold, clinical, transactional, or we can try to make it bearable. Maybe even—" She swallowed. "Maybe even tolerable." For a long moment he didn't respond. Then he laughed, that same bitter sound from before. "You think tolerance is achievable here? In this house? With me? I don't know, but I'd rather try than just give up." Alistair moved closer, and Lyra forced herself not to retreat. He stopped when he was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him, could smell cedar and smoke, and something darker beneath. "You have no idea what you're asking for," he said softly. "Then show me." His hand came up, fingers brushing her jaw, not groping, just touching, mapping the shape of her face with careful precision. "You're afraid," he murmured. "I can hear it in your breathing." "Yes." "Good. Fear means you're not stupid." His thumb traced her lower lip. "I'm not a good man, Lyra. I'm not kind. I'm not gentle. The only thing I can offer you is honesty, and the honest truth is that I will never love you. I will never be the husband you deserve." "I know. Do you?" His hand dropped. "Then why are you still here?" "Because nowhere else wants me. And because—" She took a breath. "Because I think you're lying." "About what?" "About not being capable of more than this." She gestured between them. "I've seen you with the estate, with the tenants, with the books in the library. You care about things. You just don't want anyone to know it." Alistair's expression went blank. "Get out." "No." "I said get out. Make me." They stood frozen like that, 2 people locked in a battle neither of them knew how to win. Then Alistair turned away, his shoulders rigid. "Leave, Lyra. Before I do something we'll both regret." She should have listened, should have walked out and left him to his darkness. Instead, she closed the distance between them and put her hand on his arm. "I'm not leaving," she said quietly. "Not tonight. Not tomorrow. You're stuck with me, Alistair, so we can keep fighting or we can figure out how to survive each other. Your choice." For a long moment, he didn't move. Then his hand covered hers, not pulling away, just holding. "You're going to regret this," he whispered. "Probably. I can't give you what you want. I don't even know what I want yet, so that makes two of us." He turned, and his unseeing eyes found hers with unnerving precision. "I don't know how to do this. Any of this." "Neither do I." Lyra's voice shook. "But maybe we can figure it out together." Alistair's jaw tightened. Then, slowly, carefully, he leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't romantic. It was desperate and terrifying and somehow exactly what she needed. Proof that beneath all that ice was something human. Something that could still feel. When he pulled back, his breathing was ragged. Last chance to run. Lyra looked up at him, at this broken, difficult, impossible man, and made her choice. "I'm not running," she said. And as he pulled her closer, as the distance between them finally collapsed, Lyra realized something that should have terrified her, but somehow didn't. She wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. She was fighting to stay. The morning after changed nothing. That was the first thing Lyra realized when she woke alone in Alistair's bed, sunlight cutting through the curtains like accusations. The sheets beside her were cold. He'd left hours ago, probably the moment she'd fallen asleep. No note. No acknowledgement that anything had shifted between them. She dressed in silence, her hands shaking as she laced herself into yesterday's gown. Every muscle ached. Not from pain, he'd been careful, almost clinically so, but from the tension of it. The weight of choosing this, of crossing a line she couldn't uncross. When she returned to her own quarters, Annie was waiting with fresh clothes and a carefully neutral expression. "His Grace requests your presence in the study at 9, the maid said, not meeting her eyes. Of course he did. Back to business. Back to ledgers and tenant reports and pretending last night had been nothing more than a biological necessity. Lyra wanted to scream. Instead, she let Annie help her into a fresh dress, another of the late Duchess's cast-offs, and made her way downstairs with her spine straight and her face blank. She'd made her choice. Now she had to live with it. Alistair was already at his desk when she entered, fingers moving across a braille document with mechanical precision. He didn't look up. "Close the door." Lyra did, moved to the chair across from him and sat, hands folded in her lap. Waited. The silence stretched. Outside, she could hear the distant sounds of the estate waking up. Servants moving through corridors, horses in the stable yard. Normal sounds. As if nothing had changed. "The tenant contracts," Alistair said finally, still not lifting his head. "Did you finish the review?" Her throat went tight. "Yes." "And?" 3 farms are consistently underperforming. The Marsden property hasn't met quota in 2 years. The Wickham farm lost half their livestock to disease last winter and never recovered. And the Pritchard land has soil contamination from the old mine shaft, I'm aware. He set the document aside. "Recommendations?" Lyra forced herself to focus, to pretend they were just discussing business. "Marsden needs an extension on his rent. His daughter's sick. He's been using his income for physicians instead of improvements. If we give him 6 months, he'll catch up. And if he doesn't? Then we renegotiate. But throwing him off the land accomplishes nothing. We lose a tenant, the property sits empty, and we still don't have the revenue." Alistair's fingers drummed against the desk. "The Wickham farm? Consolidate it with the northern property. The widow can't manage it alone and her son's too young. If we combine the lands and bring in a new tenant to oversee both, we increase efficiency and she keeps a share of the profits. Generous. Practical. A desperate widow with a child is a liability. A widow with stable income and a roof over her head is an asset." For the first time, Alistair looked up. His unseeing eyes found her with that unnerving precision. "You've been thinking about this. You told me to learn the estate. I'm learning." A pause. Then, "And the Pritchard land? Abandon it. The contamination's too severe. Trying to farm it is throwing money into a pit. We're better off leaving it fallow and reallocating those resources elsewhere." Alistair leaned back in his chair and something shifted in his expression. Not quite approval, but close. "You're more ruthless than I expected," he said. "I'm practical. There's a difference." "Is there?" He stood, moving to the window with that careful navigation of someone who knew every step by heart. "Pritchard's family has worked that land for 3 generations. You're suggesting we just discard them. I'm suggesting we stop pretending contaminated soil will magically heal itself. If you want to help the Pritchards, find them work elsewhere on the estate. But don't keep pouring money into a failing enterprise out of sentiment." "I don't do sentiment." "Then why are we having this conversation?" Alistair went still. When he spoke again, his voice was low, dangerous. "Careful, Duchess. Just because I allowed certain intimacies last night doesn't mean you have license to question my decisions. I'm not questioning your decisions. I'm presenting alternatives. Isn't that what you hired me for?" "I didn't hire you. I married you. There's a difference." "Then what exactly am I? Your wife? Your employee? Your—" She stopped herself before she said the word that had been burning in her mind all morning. Whore. But Alistair heard it anyway. His jaw tightened. "You're whatever you choose to be," he said. "But don't pretend last night changed the fundamental nature of this arrangement. It didn't. You're still here because you have nowhere else to go. And I'm still tolerating your presence because you're moderately useful. That's all this is." The words hit like a slap. Lyra stood, her hands clenched into fists. "You're right," she said quietly. "Last night didn't change anything. You're still a bastard, and I'm still trapped. So let's stop pretending either of us has a choice here." She turned to leave. "Lyra." She stopped, didn't turn around. "Implement your recommendations," Alistair said, "for the tenant contracts. You're right about all of them. I just wanted to see if you'd defend your reasoning under pressure." Her nails dug into her palms. "Was that a test?" "Everything's a test. You should know that by now." "And did I pass?" Silence. Then, "You're still here, aren't you?" Lyra walked out before she could do something stupid, like cry, or throw something at his head. She threw herself into work instead. Over the next week, Lyra became a ghost in her own house, moving through corridors with ledgers tucked under her arm, meeting with tenants, reorganizing supply chains, hunting down inefficiencies like they were personal enemies. Mrs. Greaves watched with something between suspicion and grudging respect. "You're making the other estates look bad," the housekeeper said one afternoon, catching Lyra in the midst of renegotiating grain prices with a local miller. "The Duchess of Harrington heard about your cost reductions and demanded her staff explain why they haven't done the same." Lyra didn't look up from her notes. "Good. You're also making enemies. The previous suppliers aren't happy about losing contracts. They should have charged fair prices. Fair doesn't matter when they have connections to half the peerage." That made Lyra pause. "Are you saying I should back down?" Mrs. Greaves' expression was unreadable. "I'm saying you should be aware of the consequences. The ton has long memories, cross the wrong people, and they'll find ways to make you pay." "Let them try." The housekeeper shook her head. "You're as stubborn as he is." "Who?" "The Duke. You two are cut from the same cloth. Too proud to bend, too angry to break. It's going to destroy you both if you're not careful." After she left, Lyra sat in the empty study and stared at the numbers swimming before her eyes. Mrs. Greaves wasn't wrong. She was making enemies. But what choice did she have? Smile and accept inefficiency? Pretend the estate wasn't hemorrhaging money in a dozen different directions? No. If she was going to be trapped here, she'd at least make it mean something, even if it meant fighting the entire world to do it. Bushang. Alistair avoided her. That became clear by the end of the first week. He stopped requesting her presence in the study. Stopped appearing in the library at night. The only time she saw him was at dinner, cold, formal affairs where they sat at opposite ends of a table built for 20 and pretended to eat while servants hovered in the background. The conversations were surgical, efficient, bloodless. "The Marsden extension has been granted." "Good. The Wickham consolidation is complete." "Fine. The harvest projections are up 3%. Acceptable." Never once did he acknowledge what had happened between them. Never once did he ask how she was managing, if she needed anything, if the work was too much. He just existed. A cold, distant presence that she orbited without ever touching. It should have been a relief. Instead, it made her furious. On the 8th night, Lyra abandoned her room and went to the West Wing uninvited. She didn't knock, just opened his door and walked in like she had every right to be there. Alistair was at his desk, reading. He didn't look surprised. Did you need something? He asked. Yes, an explanation. For? For this. Lyra gestured between them. For the fact that you've been avoiding me for over a week. For treating me like a servant instead of your wife. You are a servant. We've established that. No, you established that. I never agreed. Alistair set his book down with deliberate care. What exactly do you want from me, Lyra? Gratitude? Affection? Some declaration that you've become indispensable? He stood, and even though he couldn't see her, she felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. You're useful, I've acknowledged that, but don't mistake utility for importance. Why are you like this? Like what? Like a man who's determined to make everyone around him miserable, including yourself. His expression went glacial. Get out. No. I said, I heard you, and I'm staying. Lyra moved closer, her heart hammering. You want to know what I think? I think you're terrified. Of you, hardly. Not of me. Of this. Of letting anyone close enough to matter. Because the last time you did, careful. The word was a whip crack. You don't know what you're talking about. Then tell me. Tell me what happened that made you like this. Why? So you can pity me? So you can think you understand? Alistair's voice dropped to something dangerous. I don't need your understanding, Lyra. I don't need anything from you except the one thing you failed to provide. The words gutted her. We slept together. Once. 8 days ago. That's hardly sufficient. You haven't touched me since. Because I gave you a choice. You could have come to me. You didn't. Lyra's hand shook. You made it very clear that night meant nothing to you. That I meant nothing. Why the hell would I... Because that's the arrangement. Alistair moved toward her, and she backed up instinctively until her shoulders hit the wall. He stopped inches away, bracing one hand beside her head. You want honesty? Fine. Here's the truth. I don't know how to want you without hating myself for it. I don't know how to need someone without it becoming a weapon they can use against me. So yes, I avoid you. Yes, I treat you like an employee, because the alternative is admitting that you've gotten under my skin, and I can't afford that. His breath was warm against her face. She could smell cedar and smoke, and beneath it, something raw, desperate. You're under my skin too, she whispered. I know. Then why? Because skin heals. Wounds close. If we keep this clinical, keep it transactional, we both survive. But if we... He stopped, stepped back abruptly. You should leave. I don't want to. Lyra, shit. I don't want to leave, and I don't want to keep pretending this is just business. I want... Her voice cracked. I want you to look at me like I matter. I can't look at you at all. You know what I mean. Alistair turned away, one hand pressed against the desk like he needed it for balance. What you're asking for, I can't give it to you. Why not? Because I tried that once. I let someone in. I trusted them. He stopped, took a breath. Her name was Eleanor. We were engaged. I was 19, she was 17, beautiful, clever, everything I thought I wanted. And when the fever took my sight, when I woke up in darkness and couldn't see her face anymore, do you know what she did? Lyra's throat closed. Alistair? She left, broke the engagement within a week, said she couldn't marry a cripple, said her family wouldn't allow it. His voice was flat, dead. I begged her to stay, got down on my knees in front of her and begged like a dog. And she looked at me with those perfect blue eyes I'd never see again, and laughed. I'm not her. No, you're worse, because she was honest about what she wanted. You? You keep pushing, keep demanding more, and I don't know what endgame you're playing. Are you trying to manipulate me into caring, into giving you power over me, or are you genuinely stupid enough to think this can be anything other than what it is? The words should have hurt, should have sent her running. Instead, they made everything click into place. You're not afraid I'll leave, Lyra said slowly. You're afraid I'll stay. Alistair went very still. You're afraid that if you let me in, really let me in, you'll start to depend on me, and then I'll have the power to destroy you the way she did. She moved toward him, and he didn't retreat. That's why you keep pushing me away. Not because you don't want me here, because you do. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? She was close enough now to see the tension in his jaw, the white-knuckle grip he had on the desk. You said I'm under your skin. You said you don't know how to want me without hating yourself. That's not indifference, Alistair. That's fear. And what if it is? He turned toward her, and his eyes found hers with terrifying accuracy. What if I am afraid? What difference does it make? I'm still broken, still blind, still incapable of giving you anything resembling a normal marriage. I never asked for normal. I asked to matter. You do. The admission seemed to tear out of him. You do matter, and I hate it. I hate that I listen for your footsteps in the hall. I hate that I've memorized the sound of your breathing. I hate that when you don't come to dinner, I notice. Because noticing means caring, and caring means weakness, and I can't— His voice broke. I can't be weak again. Not for you. Not for anyone. Lyra reached up and cupped his face between her hands. He flinched but didn't pull away. Then don't be weak, she said. Be honest. Stop hiding behind this armor and just be human with me. I don't know how. Neither do I. But we can figure it out together. For a long moment they stood frozen, her hands on his face, his breath ragged, the space between them charged with something that felt too big to name. Then Alistair's control shattered. He pulled her against him, one hand fisting in her hair, and kissed her like he was drowning. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't sweet. It was desperation and anger and need all tangled together. And Lyra met it with equal force, because she was just as desperate, just as angry, just as tired of pretending this was anything less than what it was. They didn't make it to the bed. This time, when morning came, he was still there. Lyra woke on the floor beside his desk, wrapped in his coat, Alistair's arm heavy across her waist. Sunlight streamed through the windows, painting everything gold. She could hear his breathing, slow, even, peaceful in a way she'd never seen him before. She shifted slightly, and his grip tightened. Don't, he murmured, voice rough with sleep. Not yet. So she stayed. Let herself have this moment of quiet, of warmth, of something that almost felt like peace. I meant what I said last night, Alistair said after a while. I don't know how to do this. I know. And I'm going to hurt you, probably repeatedly. I don't know how to be, soft. I'm not asking for soft. I'm asking for honest. He was quiet for a moment. Then, the estate needs you. I've been fighting that reality for weeks, but it's true. You've accomplished more in 2 weeks than I managed in 2 years. The tenants respect you. The staff listens to you. He stopped. You're good at this. It wasn't a declaration of love, but coming from him, it felt close. Thank you, Lyra said. Don't thank me. I'm not complimenting you. I'm acknowledging a fact. But his hand moved to her hair, fingers threading through the tangles. There's a dinner in 3 weeks. The Harrington estate. All the local gentry will be there. You'll need to attend. Will you be there? No. I don't attend social functions. Why not? Because I'm blind, Lyra. Because watching me navigate a room full of people who think I'm half a man is no one's idea of entertainment. She turned in his arms, forcing him to face her even if he couldn't see. What if I need you there? You don't. Yes, I do. Because showing up alone makes me look weak. Makes it look like you're ashamed of me. Or worse, like the rumors are true. Alistair's jaw tightened. What rumors? The ones my stepmother's been spreading. About our marriage being a sham, about you being incapable. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. She said that? His voice was lethal. She implied it, and if I show up to that dinner without you, everyone's going to assume she's right. So bring a chaperone. Mrs. Greaves, one of the servants. That's not the point. The point is— Lyra sat up, pulling his coat around her shoulders. The point is that I'm your wife. And if you can't even be seen in public with me, what does that say about us? It says I'm protecting you from the humiliation of being associated with a blind cripple. Stop calling yourself that. Why? It's what I am. No, it's what you've decided you are. It's the armor you hide behind so you don't have to risk anything. Lyra's voice shook. You want honesty? Fine. Here's mine. I'm terrified. Every day in this house, I'm terrified. Terrified that I'm not good enough, that I'll fail, that you'll find a reason to discard me like everyone else has, but I show up anyway. I do the work anyway. I fight anyway. And the absolute least you could do is stand beside me when I need you. Alistair's expression was unreadable. You're asking me to attend a social function where I'll be judged, pitied, and mocked, where every mistake I make will be ammunition for people who already think I'm pathetic. I'm asking you to choose me. Just once. Choose me over your fear. The silence stretched. Lyra could see him warring with himself, could see the tension in every line of his body. Finally, he stood, reaching for his shirt. I'll think about it, he said. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. He buttoned the shirt with practiced efficiency, not looking at her. You should return to your quarters. The servants will talk if they find you here in the morning. Let them talk. Lyra, I said let them talk. I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending this doesn't exist. She stood, letting his coat fall away. If you're ashamed of me, say so, but don't use the servants as an excuse. I'm not ashamed of you. Then prove it. Come to the dinner, stand beside me, show the entire county that you're not afraid of them. Alistair's hand stilled on his buttons. You have no idea what you're asking. Then explain it to me. I can't, the words burst out of him. I can't explain what it's like to walk into a room and know that everyone is watching you, waiting for you to stumble, to feel their pity like a weight on your shoulders, to hear the whispers, oh, poor Duke Thornwick, so tragic, what a waste. I can't explain how much I hate myself for letting it matter, for caring what they think when I should be above it. But I do care. I hate that I care, but I do. Lyra crossed to him, took his hands. Then let me carry some of that weight. That's what marriage is supposed to be, isn't it? Sharing the burden? This isn't a burden you signed up for. I signed up for you, all of you, the good and the bad and the terrifying. She pressed his palm against her cheek. Please, Alistair, I can't do this alone. For a long moment he stood motionless. Then slowly, his thumb traced the line of her cheekbone. You're going to regret this, he said quietly. Probably, but I'd rather regret trying than regret never having tried at all. He pulled her against his chest, and Lyra wrapped her arms around him, feeling the tension slowly drain from his body. 3 weeks, he said into her hair. I have 3 weeks to figure out how not to humiliate you in front of the entire peerage. You won't humiliate me. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because you're stronger than you think you are, and because I'll be right there beside you. Alistair didn't respond, just held her tighter, like she was the only solid thing in a world made of shifting sand. And in that moment, Lyra realized something that should have terrified her, but somehow didn't. She was falling for him. For this difficult, damaged, impossible man who fought against caring with every breath, and lost a little more each day. God help them both. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Lyra threw herself into planning for the Harrington dinner with the same ruthless efficiency she'd applied to the estate. New dresses were commissioned, not cast-offs this time, but proper gowns tailored specifically for her. She met with Mrs. Greaves to go over etiquette, social hierarchies, who was allied with whom, and who hated whose guts. The Duchess of Harrington is a viper, the housekeeper warned. She'll smile to your face and stab you in the back before dessert. Don't trust anything she says. Noted. And Lady Morrison will try to corner you about the Duke's health. She's been angling for information for years. What should I tell her? Nothing. Smile, deflect, and change the subject. Never give them ammunition. Lyra absorbed it all like a woman preparing for war. Because that's what this was. War. Against her stepmother's rumors, against the Tone's judgment, against every person who'd decided Alistair was weak and she was desperate. She was going to prove them all wrong. Meanwhile, Alistair became increasingly tense. She'd find him in the library at odd hours, pacing the length of the room like a caged animal. When she tried to talk to him, he'd brush her off with one-word answers. I'm fine. Just thinking. Leave me alone. But at night he'd come to her room, or she'd go to his, and in the darkness the armor would crack just enough for her to see the man beneath. I'm going to fail, he told her one night, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm going to walk into that ballroom and trip over my own feet, and everyone will see exactly how pathetic I am. You won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because I've watched you navigate this entire estate without a single mistake. You know every step, every turn. You're not going to trip. That's here. That's familiar. The Harrington estate will be full of people who underestimate you. Let them, and then prove them wrong by simply existing. She pressed a kiss to his temple. You're not weak, Alistair. You're the strongest person I know. You just don't see it yet. He laughed bitterly. I don't see anything. You see more than most people with perfect vision. You see problems before they happen. You see inefficiency and waste and how to fix it. You see... She stopped. You saw me. When everyone else looked right through me, you saw that I could be useful, that I could matter. That's different. How? He didn't answer, just pulled her closer and buried his face in her hair. 3 days before the dinner, a letter arrived from London. Lyra recognized Caroline's handwriting immediately and almost threw it in the fire unopened. But something made her break the seal. Dearest Lyra, I've heard the most interesting rumors about the upcoming Harrington dinner. Apparently the Duke has agreed to attend? How unexpected. I do hope he doesn't make a fool of himself. It would be such a shame if his limitations became public spectacle. Do give him my regards, and remind him that some things are better kept private. With love, Caroline Lyra's hands shook as she crumpled the letter. Caroline knew. Somehow she'd heard about the dinner and was already positioning herself to make it a disaster. She found Alistair in the study, working through estate documents. We need to talk, she said. He looked up. About? My stepmother. She knows about the Harrington dinner, and she's planning something. Alistair's expression went cold. Let her plan. You don't understand. She's been spreading rumors for weeks. If she shows up at that dinner, then we'll deal with it. He stood, moving around the desk. I'm not canceling because your stepmother wants to play games. I'm not asking you to cancel. I'm asking you to be prepared. She's going to try to embarrass you, to prove that the marriage is a sham. And how exactly will she do that? Lyra hesitated. By implying that we haven't consummated the marriage, that you're incapable. The silence was deafening. I see, Alistair said finally. And you think I should what? Defend my capabilities in front of the entire peerage? No, I wanted you to know what we're walking into. I appreciate the warning, but I'm not going to dignify such accusations with a response. He turned back to his desk. If people want to believe I'm a eunuch, let them. Their opinions mean nothing to me. They should, because those opinions affect the estate, the tenants, our reputation. Our reputation. He said it like the words tasted foul. Is that what this is about? You're worried about how you'll look if people think your husband can't perform his marital duties? That's not... You're twisting my words. Am I? Because it sounds like you're more concerned with appearances than reality. He moved toward her, and there was something dangerous in his expression. Tell me, Lyra, if the rumors were true, if I truly was incapable, would you still be here? The question hit like a punch. Of course I would. Would you? He was close now, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him. Or would you find a way to leave? To get the marriage annulled and find someone who could give you what you need? Stop it. Stop what? Asking uncomfortable questions? Isn't that what you wanted? Honesty? This isn't honesty. This is you lashing out because you're scared. I'm not scared. Yes, you are. You're terrified that I'll abandon you the way Eleanor did, that I'll decide you're not worth the effort and leave. Lyra's voice cracked. But I'm not her, Alistair. I'm not going anywhere, no matter what Caroline says, no matter what the ton thinks. I'm staying. Until when? Until you realize this is all I can give you? Until you wake up one day and understand that I will never be the husband you deserve? You keep saying that. You keep telling me I deserve better, but you won't let me decide for myself what I deserve. She grabbed his arms, forcing him to face her. I choose this. I choose you. Broken, difficult, impossible you. And if you're going to push me away, at least have the courage to do it honestly, instead of picking fights to make me leave. Alistair went rigid. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then his hands came up, gripping her shoulders hard enough to bruise. You want honesty? He said, his voice low and dangerous. Fine. Here's the truth. I don't know how to trust you. I don't know how to believe that you won't leave the moment things get difficult. Because everyone leaves, Lyra. Everyone. My mother died. Eleanor left. Even my father. He looked at me after the fever like I was broken glass. Something to be handled carefully and kept at a distance. So forgive me if I don't believe in your promises. Forgive me if I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Bitum Diaries. Tears burned in Lyra's eyes. Then let me prove it to you. Let me show you that I'm different. How? By standing beside me at one dinner? By not flinching when people whisper about how pathetic I am? He released her abruptly. That's not proof. That's just you being stubborn. Then what would be proof? What do I have to do to make you believe me? Alistair turned away. I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'm too broken to believe in anything anymore. The words hung in the air between them. Final. Devastating. Lyra wanted to scream, wanted to shake him until he understood that she wasn't going anywhere, but she could see it in the rigid line of his shoulders, the way his hands clenched at his sides. He'd already decided she would leave, already written the end of this story in his mind, and nothing she said would change that. Fine, she said quietly. If you're determined to push me away, I can't stop you, but I'm still going to that dinner, and I'm still going to stand by your side. And when it's over, when you've proven to yourself that you can survive it, we're going to have this conversation again, and you're going to have to decide whether you want to keep running or whether you want to actually try. She walked out before he could respond. What? The night of the Harrington dinner arrived with all the subtlety of an execution. Lyra dressed carefully, choosing a gown of deep emerald that made her skin look like porcelain. Annie helped with her hair, pinning it up in an elaborate style that took an hour to complete. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like a duchess. Now she just had to act like one. Alistair was waiting in the entrance hall when she came down, dressed in formal black with silver embroidery at the cuffs. He looked devastating, dangerous, like a man going into battle. Are you ready? He asked. Are you? A pause. Then, no. But we're doing this anyway. The carriage ride was silent. Lyra sat across from Alistair, watching the tension build in his jaw with every mile. She wanted to reach for his hand, to say something reassuring, but he'd made it clear he didn't want comfort. So she sat in silence and prepared for war. The Harrington estate was massive, even larger than Blackthorn, with grounds that seemed to stretch for miles. Carriages lined the drive, disgorging couples in glittering finery. Lyra could hear music spilling from the open doors, laughter and conversation mixing into a wall of sound. There must be 200 people here, she murmured. Alistair's expression went blank. Wonderful. A footman opened their carriage door. Lyra stepped out first, then turned to help Alistair. He took her arm with the ease of long practice, but she could feel the tension thrumming through him. Just breathe, she whispered, one step at a time. They walked into the lion's den together. The ballroom was enormous. Crystal chandeliers hung from a vaulted ceiling, casting prismatic light across floors polished to a mirror shine. Guests clustered in groups, their voices rising and falling like waves, and every single one of them turned to stare when the Duke and Duchess of Blackthorn entered. Lyra felt Alistair's grip tighten on her arm. Smile, she murmured, and keep walking. They made it 3 steps before the first person approached. Lady Morrison, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. Duke Thornwick, how unexpected to see you here, and this must be your new bride. She looked Lyra up and down like she was livestock at auction. My dear, you're even lovelier than the rumor suggested. Though I must say it's quite brave of you to marry a man in the Duke's condition. Alistair's expression went glacial. My condition, Lady Morrison? Well, you know, she waved a hand vaguely. Your situation. It must be so difficult for you both. Lyra felt her temper flare. The only difficulty we face, Lady Morrison, is navigating social functions where people feel entitled to comment on private matters. But we manage. The older woman's eyes narrowed. Of course, I meant no offense. Didn't you? Lyra smiled sweetly. How kind of you to clarify. They moved past before Lady Morrison could respond, and Lyra felt a savage satisfaction bloom in her chest. You just made an enemy, Alistair murmured. Good. I was running low. Despite himself, she felt him smile. They navigated the room slowly, Alistair's hand on her arm, Lyra describing the layout in quiet whispers. 3 steps ahead, there's a table. 6 feet to the right, a group near the windows. He moved with her guidance, his expression carefully neutral. But Lyra could feel every stare, could hear the whispers starting to build. Is that really the Duke of Blackthorn? I heard he never leaves his estate. Poor girl, married to a blind man. What a waste. She wanted to scream at all of them, wanted to make them see that Alistair was worth 10 of them combined. But she kept her expression smooth, her posture perfect. They were halfway across the room when a voice cut through the noise. "Lyra, darling, there you are." Lyra's blood turned to ice. Caroline. Her stepmother materialized from the crowd like a viper in silk, all false warmth and poisonous charm. She looked immaculate as always, auburn hair perfectly styled, gown cut to showcase wealth without crossing into vulgarity. "Mother," Lyra said, the word tasting like ash, "I didn't realize you'd be here." "Oh, the Duchess of Harrington and I are old friends. She insisted I attend." Caroline's eyes slid to Alistair, and something ugly flickered across her face. "And Duke Thornwick. What a surprise. I didn't think you attended social functions." "I make exceptions," Alistair said, his voice flat. "How accommodating." Caroline moved closer, and Lyra felt Alistair tense beside her. "You both look well. Marriage must agree with you. Though I have to say, Lyra, you look exhausted. Are you sleeping well?" The implication was clear. Lyra's nails dug into her palms. "I sleep perfectly well, thank you." "Do you? That's good. I was worried, what with all the adjustments you must be making." Caroline's smile sharpened. "It can't be easy managing a household of that size, especially when your husband is so dependent on you for certain things." Alistair went very, very still. "I'm not dependent on anyone," he said quietly. "Of course not." Caroline's tone dripped false sympathy. "I only meant that given your condition, Lyra must have to help with so many tasks, navigation, reading correspondence, attending to personal needs." The insinuation hung in the air like poison gas. Lyra felt something crack inside her. All the control she'd been maintaining, all the careful politeness. It shattered. "You know what, Caroline?" she said, her voice cutting through the sudden silence around them. "You're right. My husband does need help sometimes. With navigation, with reading, with 100 small tasks that the rest of us take for granted." She stepped forward, and her stepmother actually backed up. "But you want to know what he doesn't need? He doesn't need a manipulative parasite questioning his worth as a man. He doesn't need—" "Lyra!" Alistair's hand found hers, squeezing once, a warning, but she was too far gone to stop. "He doesn't need you, or anyone else in this room, judging him for circumstances beyond his control. Because despite being blind, despite every obstacle you people put in his way, he's accomplished more than most of you ever will. He runs an estate that's thriving. He's respected by his tenants. Lyra, stop!" Alistair's voice was cold. Final. She turned to look at him and found his expression completely blank. Shut down. "We're leaving," he said. "But now." He released her arm and turned, navigating toward the exit with precision that suggested he'd memorized the route on the way in. Lyra stood frozen, watching him go, Caroline's poisonous smile burning into her peripheral vision. "Well," her stepmother said softly, "that was unfortunate." Lyra didn't respond, just gathered her skirts and followed Alistair out into the night, her heart shattering with every step. They didn't speak in the carriage, didn't look at each other. The silence was suffocating. When they arrived at Blackthorn, Alistair climbed out and walked straight into the house without waiting for her. Lyra followed, her hands shaking. "Alistair, please, don't." He stopped in the entrance hall, his back to her. "Don't say anything." "I was trying to defend you." "I didn't ask you to defend me." He spun around, and the rage in his expression made her flinch. "I didn't ask you to make a scene, to embarrass me in front of the entire peerage, to—" His voice cracked. "To prove every single one of my fears right." "What are you talking about? You stood there and told them I need help, that I'm dependent, that I can't function without you." He moved toward her, and Lyra backed up until her shoulders hit the wall. "Do you have any idea what you just did? You confirmed every pathetic assumption they've ever made about me. You made me look weak." "No, I was trying to show them you're strong. By listing all the ways I need assistance? By making yourself sound like my nursemaid?" Alistair's laugh was bitter. "You want to know the real humiliation tonight? It wasn't Caroline's insinuations. It wasn't the stares or the whispers. It was watching my own wife confirm that I'm exactly what they think I am. A cripple who can't survive without someone holding his hand." Tears burned down Lyra's cheeks. "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it? Then what did you mean?" Because from where I'm standing, you just threw me under the carriage to score points against your stepmother. I was defending you. I don't need defending. I need... He stopped, took a shaking breath. I need you to understand that I've spent 12 years learning to survive in this world despite my blindness. 12 years building enough competence that people forget I can't see. And you just undid all of that in 30 seconds. Lyra's chest felt like it was caving in. Alistair, please, get out. His voice was empty. Go to your room. I can't look at you right now. You can't look at me anyway. The words came out before she could stop them. Cruel, vicious, exactly the kind of thing that couldn't be taken back. Alistair went completely still. Then he turned and walked away, moving through the darkened halls with the precision of a man who'd spent a lifetime navigating without sight. And Lyra stood alone in the entrance hall, watching him disappear, knowing she'd just destroyed the one thing she'd been trying to build. She sank to the floor, her elaborate gown pooling around her like a shroud, and finally let herself break. Because she'd been wrong. She hadn't proven anything to Alistair tonight, except that he was right not to trust her. She'd just become exactly what he'd feared most. Someone who... Lyra didn't sleep. She sat on the floor of the entrance hall until her legs went numb, until the candles burned down to stubs, until the servants found her at dawn and pretended not to see the tear tracks on her face. Annie helped her upstairs without comment, stripped her out of the ruined dress, and left her staring at the ceiling while morning light bled through the windows. You can't look at me anyway? The words kept circling back. The cruelest thing she'd ever said, and she'd thrown them at him like weapons. At a man who'd spent 12 years learning to survive without sight. Who'd built an entire life around competence and control, only to have his own wife confirm every fear he'd ever had. She'd destroyed him. And for what? To score points against Caroline? To prove she could defend him when he'd explicitly told her not to? Lyra rolled onto her side, pulling the blankets over her head. She wanted to disappear. Wanted to sink into the mattress and never emerge. But around 9 o'clock, Mrs. Greaves knocked and entered without waiting for permission. The Duke wants to see you. Lyra's stomach dropped. Now? Immediately, in his study. The housekeeper's expression was unreadable. And Duchess? Whatever happened last night, fix it. This house can't survive another broken marriage. Another broken marriage. The words hung in the air long after Mrs. Greaves left. Lyra forced herself to dress, chose something simple, a gray day dress that felt appropriately funereal. Her hands shook as she fastened the buttons. She had no idea what she was walking into. Rage, cold dismissal, an annulment notice already drawn up and waiting for her signature? The walk to the study felt like a death march. She found Alistair at his desk, fingers moving across a braille document with mechanical precision. He didn't look up when she entered, didn't acknowledge her presence at all. Close the door, he said. She did. Sit. She sat. The silence stretched. Outside, rain had started, a steady drumming against the windows that matched the pounding of her heart. Lyra watched Alistair's hands move across the page, watched the muscle jump in his jaw, and waited for the axe to fall. Finally, he set the document aside. I've made a decision, he said. His voice was empty, clinical. About our arrangement. Lyra's throat closed. Alistair, you will continue to manage the estate. You've proven effective at that, and replacing you would be an inconvenience. However, he paused, we will no longer maintain the illusion of a functional marriage. You'll move to the guest wing, will interact only when necessary for household business, and you will attend no further social functions as my wife. Each word hit like a physical blow. You're banishing me. I'm creating appropriate boundaries, something I should have done from the beginning. Because of last night? Because I defended you? Because you humiliated me. The words cracked out like a whip. Alistair's hands clenched on the desk. Because you stood in front of the entire peerage and confirmed that I'm exactly what they think I am. Weak, dependent, incapable of managing my own affairs. That's not what I said, isn't it? Let me refresh your memory. My husband needs help with navigation, with reading, with 100 small tasks. Your exact words. He stood, and Lyra had never seen him look so rigid. Do you have any idea what those words cost me? What it's like to spend years building competence only to have it stripped away in 30 seconds? I was trying to show them you're not ashamed of needing help, I am ashamed. The admission tore out of him. I hate that I need help. I hate that I can't read a letter without Braille. I hate that I have to memorize floor plans to navigate my own house. I hate every single reminder that I'm not, his voice broke, that I'm not whole. Lyra stood, moving toward him. You are whole. You're more capable than most people with perfect sight. Oh, don't. He held up a hand. Don't try to make this better with platitudes. You don't get to destroy me and then offer comfort. I wasn't trying to destroy you. Then what were you trying to do? Because from where I'm standing, you used my blindness as ammunition against your stepmother. You made me the victim in your little drama. And now the entire ton thinks you're some kind of martyr, sacrificing yourself to care for poor, helpless Duke Thornwick. The accusation stung because there was truth in it. She had used him. Maybe not consciously, but she'd made the fight about his capabilities when it should have been about Caroline's cruelty. I'm sorry, she whispered. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't undo what you did. Alistair moved to the window, one hand braced against the frame. I told you from the beginning what I needed from you. Discretion, competence, a heir, that's all. I didn't ask for defense. I didn't ask for you to play the devoted wife. I certainly didn't ask for you to make me an object of pity. You're not an object of pity. Tell that to Lady Morrison. Tell that to everyone who watched you list my inadequacies like you were cataloging damaged goods. He turned, and his unseeing eyes found hers with terrible precision. I can survive being blind, Lyra. I've done it for 12 years, but I can't survive being pitied, and that's exactly what you've made me. Lyra felt tears building, but refused to let them fall. What do you want me to do? I want you to stay in your lane, manage the estate, keep the household running, but stop. His voice went rough. Stop trying to fix me. Stop trying to make me into something I'm not. I don't need saving. I need to be left alone. Fine. The word came out flat. Dead. I'll move to the guest wing today. I'll stay out of your way. Is that all? Alistair's expression flickered, something that might have been regret, but it was gone before she could be sure. That's all? Lyra turned to leave. Wait. She stopped, hand on the doorknob. There's one more thing. Alistair's voice was carefully neutral. Your stepmother sent a letter this morning. It was delivered to the estate. Ice flooded Lyra's veins. What did it say? Read it yourself. He pulled an envelope from his desk drawer and held it out. Lyra crossed the room and took it with shaking hands, broke the seal. The letter was short, brutal. Dearest Lyra, thank you for the delightful entertainment last night. Watching you defend your crippled husband was quite touching. I'm sure the entire ton will be talking about it for weeks. I wanted to reach out personally to inform you of some exciting news. I've secured a match for your sister Margaret, Lord Pemberton, a man of considerable wealth and standing. The engagement will be announced next month. Margaret will, of course, need a trousseau. New gowns, jewels, all the necessities for a proper society wedding. I estimate the cost at around £5,000. I'm sure you'll want to contribute, given that Margaret is your only remaining family. I'll expect the funds by the end of the month. After all, it's the least you can do, considering how generous I was in arranging your own advantageous marriage. Do give the Duke my regards. With love, Caroline. Lyra read the letter twice, 3 times. Each word was a knife twist. She's blackmailing me, she said finally. So it would seem. Margaret's engagement is probably fabricated. This is just Caroline's way of extracting money from the estate. Probably. You don't sound surprised. Alistair's expression was grim. I'm not. Your stepmother strikes me as the type to leverage any advantage. Last night's disaster gave her exactly the ammunition she needed. And you think I should pay her? I think you should do whatever keeps her from causing more damage. £5,000 is a small price to prevent further scandal. Lyra stared at him. You want me to reward her for blackmail? I want you to handle the problem quietly and efficiently. That's what you're here for, isn't it? Managing complications. He returned to his desk, effectively dismissing her. The household accounts can absorb the expense. Transfer the funds and be done with it. Just like that. Just like that. Lyra crumpled the letter in her fist. You really don't care, do you? About me, about what she's doing. I care about the estate. I care about maintaining stability. Your personal vendetta against your stepmother is not my concern. The words were delivered without inflection, without emotion, like she was a servant being given instructions rather than his wife. Something inside Lyra snapped. "You know what?" she said quietly. "You're right. Last night was a disaster. I humiliated you, embarrassed myself, and gave Caroline exactly what she wanted. But at least I was trying. At least I gave a damn about something other than maintaining control and keeping people at arm's length." Lyra, no. You wanted honesty? Here it is. You're not broken because you're blind, Alistair. You're broken because you've chosen to be. Because it's easier to hide behind your disability than to actually risk feeling something. You talk about Eleanor like she destroyed you, but the truth is, you destroyed yourself. You decided you were unlovable and spent 12 years making sure no one could prove you wrong. Alistair's face went white. "Get out." Gladly. She walked out before her voice could break, before he could see how much it cost her to say those words, before she could take them back. Mati. The guest wing was smaller than her previous room, colder. The windows overlooked the north gardens, overgrown and wild, nobody's responsibility. Appropriate. Lyra spent the rest of the day moving her belongings with Annie's help. The maid worked in silence, but her expression said everything. Pity, concern. The same look the entire household probably wore. Another broken marriage. By evening, Lyra was installed in her new quarters with all the permanence of a prison sentence. She sat at the small writing desk and stared at Caroline's letter, smoothed flat now, every word etched into her memory. £5,000. She could pay it. Alistair was right about that. The estate could absorb the cost. But paying felt like surrender, like admitting Caroline had won. And yet, what choice did she have? If she refused, Caroline would escalate. More rumors, more public humiliation. She'd find ways to poison every relationship Lyra tried to build, every scrap of reputation she'd managed to salvage. Unless... The thought came slowly, dangerously. What if she didn't just pay Caroline off? What if she removed the threat entirely? Lyra pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began to write. What? The reply took 3 days to arrive. Lyra was in the estate office, reviewing supply contracts, when Mrs. Greaves brought it in. "From London," the housekeeper said, her tone carefully neutral. Lyra broke the seal with steady hands. "Lyra, how clever of you to propose an alternative arrangement. I'll admit, I didn't think you had it in you. Very well. I accept your terms. The funds will be transferred as discussed, and in return I will cease all communication regarding your marriage. Consider our business concluded. Though I must say, I'm impressed. You're more like me than I thought." Caroline Lyra folded the letter and slipped it into her desk drawer. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear, from triumph. She'd done it. She'd outmaneuvered Caroline using the woman's own tactics against her, and it had cost her nothing more than... "What did you do?" Lyra spun around. Alistair stood in the doorway, his expression thunderous. "I don't know what you're... Oh, don't lie to me. I just received a very interesting visit from my solicitor. Apparently there was a transfer of funds from the estate accounts. £10,000. To your stepmother." He moved into the room, and Lyra had never seen him look so furious. "Care to explain?" Her mind raced. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you doubled the blackmail payment without my authorization." "I didn't pay her off. I bought her out." "What?" Lyra stood, facing him across the desk. "Caroline doesn't just want money. She wants control. So I gave her an alternative, £10,000 in exchange for complete silence. No more rumors. No more letters. No more interference in our lives. And you made this decision without consulting me? You told me to handle it. I told you to transfer £5,000 and be done with it. I didn't authorize you to..." He stopped, took a breath. "Do you have any idea what you've done? I solved the problem. You threw money at it, my money, without permission." "Our money," Lyra shot back. "I'm the Duchess. I manage the household accounts. That includes determining how to handle threats to the estate." "Threats you created. This entire situation exists because of your behavior at the Harrington dinner." The words hit like a slap. Lyra felt her face flush. "You're right," she said quietly. "This is my fault. So I fixed it. And if you can't see that, if you're so determined to punish me that you'd rather I let Caroline continue to destroy us both, then maybe we should just end this now. Annul the marriage. Go our separate ways. At least then I won't have to watch you slowly suffocate under the weight of your own pride. Alistair's hands clenched. My pride? You're the one who... The door burst open. Mrs. Greaves stood there, her face ashen. Your Grace, there's been an incident. Alistair went still. What kind of incident? It's the school, the one the Duchess has been funding. There was a fire. Lyra's blood turned to ice. What? It happened this morning. No one was hurt, thank God. The children weren't in session yet. But the building is destroyed, completely gone. How? Lyra demanded. How did it start? Mrs. Greaves' expression was grim. The constable says it was arson. Someone deliberately set it. The room tilted. Lyra grabbed the desk for balance. Who would... But she already knew. Already saw it playing out with terrible clarity. Caroline, the letter, the quick acceptance of terms, the comment about being impressed. You're more like me than I thought. It hadn't been a compliment. It had been a warning. She did this, Lyra whispered. Caroline, this is her revenge. Alistair's expression was unreadable. You don't know that. Yes, I do. I threatened her. I tried to buy her silence, and she... Lyra's voice cracked. She burned down a school full of children to prove she's still in control. The children are fine. You said no one was hurt. This time? What about next time? What if she... Lyra couldn't finish the sentence. The implications were too horrifying. Mrs. Greaves cleared her throat. There's more. The constable found evidence. A letter, partially burned. It was addressed to you, Your Grace. She held out a charred piece of paper. Lyra took it with shaking hands. Most of the text was destroyed, but 3 words remained, written in Caroline's elegant script. Consider this insurance. The paper fell from Lyra's fingers. She's telling me she can do worse, she said. That if I don't comply, if I don't keep paying, keep submitting, she'll escalate. The school was just a warning. Then we go to the authorities, Alistair said. We show them the letter. We have no proof it's from her. This fragment doesn't prove anything. Caroline's too smart to leave a trail. Lyra pressed her hands against her face. I played right into her hands. I thought I was being clever, negotiating terms. But she was 3 steps ahead. She took my money and sent a message at the same time. So what do you propose we do? Cave to her demands? I don't know. The words came out as a scream. I don't know how to fight someone who's willing to burn down a building full of innocent children. I don't know how to... She stopped, stared at Alistair. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Proof that I'm incompetent, that I can't handle my own affairs without making everything worse. His expression flickered. That's not... Yes, it is. You've been waiting for me to fail, to prove that letting me manage anything was a mistake. Well, congratulations. You were right. I failed. I made everything worse. And now people I was trying to help are suffering because of it. Lyra, just say it. Say you want me gone. Say you want to annul this disaster of a marriage and find someone who won't cause you so many problems. Alistair was silent for a long moment. Then, is that what you want? To leave? The question caught her off guard. What? You keep bringing up annulment, separation, like you're trying to give me an out. He moved closer and his voice dropped. So I'm asking, do you want to leave? Lyra's throat closed, because the honest answer, the one she couldn't say out loud, was no. Despite everything, despite the fighting and the humiliation and the constant feeling of drowning, she didn't want to leave. She wanted to stay. She wanted to fix this. But she had no idea how. I want to stop failing, she whispered. I want to stop making everything worse. I want... Her voice broke. I want to be someone you don't regret marrying. Alistair's expression cracked. For just a second, she saw past the armor to the exhaustion beneath. The fear, the same desperate uncertainty she felt. Then Mrs. Greaves cleared her throat. Your Graces, there's something else. A messenger arrived from London just after the constable, from your stepmother, Duchess. What now? Lyra asked wearily. The housekeeper handed her an envelope. Lyra broke the seal with numb fingers. The letter inside was short, vicious. Dearest Lyra, I hope you've received news of the unfortunate fire, such a tragedy. I do hope you'll be more careful with your charitable endeavors in the future. Accidents happen so easily when one isn't paying attention. I've reconsidered our arrangement. £10,000 is insufficient. I'll require an additional £5,000 per quarter, delivered promptly. Consider it an insurance policy against further accidents. I know you'll make the right decision. After all, you wouldn't want anything to happen to those dear tenants of yours. Or that lovely estate. Fire spread so quickly in old buildings. With love, Caroline Lyra read the letter twice. Then she handed it to Alistair without a word. She watched his expression go from confused to horrified to absolutely murderous. She's threatening arson, he said flatly. She's threatening to burn down my estate. Our estate. And yes, she is. This is extortion. This is Caroline. Lyra sank into the chair. And I have no idea how to stop her. Alistair crushed the letter in his fist. We go to the authorities. Show them everything. This is a clear threat. With no proof. Caroline will deny it. She'll claim the letter is a forgery. And even if they believe us, by the time any legal action is taken, she'll have done irreparable damage. Lyra looked up at him. She knows we're trapped. She knows we can't fight back without risking everything. So what? We just pay her? Forever? I don't see another option. The silence was suffocating. Lyra could see Alistair working through possibilities, discarding each one as unworkable. His hands clenched and unclenched. His jaw worked. Finally, there might be a way. What way? We give her what she wants. Lyra stared at him. You mean pay her? No, I mean we make her think she's won. We pay 1/4's worth, £5,000. We send a letter agreeing to her terms, promising compliance. And while she's congratulating herself on her victory, we build a case against her. Quietly. Carefully. We find witnesses to the arson. We trace the money she's already taken. We gather enough evidence that when we go to the authorities, there's no question of her guilt. That could take months. Then it takes months, but at least we're doing something other than rolling over. Lyra wanted to believe him, wanted to think there was a way out of this that didn't involve complete surrender. But she'd underestimated Caroline before, and it had cost innocent people their school. What if she realizes what we're doing? She asked. What if she escalates anyway? Then we deal with it, together. Alistair held out his hand. I know I've been difficult. I know I've pushed you away and blamed you for things that weren't entirely your fault. But this is bigger than our personal issues. Caroline is a threat to the estate, to the tenants, to everything we've been trying to build, and I can't fight her alone. Lyra looked at his outstretched hand, at the man who'd spent weeks telling her he didn't need her, didn't want her, wished she'd never walked through his door. Now he was asking her to stay, to fight beside him. She took his hand. Together, she said. The plan was simple, dangerous, probably doomed to fail, but it was all they had. Lyra drafted a reply to Caroline, carefully worded to sound defeated, submissive, the kind of letter a woman who'd been beaten down would write. She included confirmation of the first payment and a promise of compliance going forward. It nearly killed her to send it. Meanwhile, Alistair set his solicitor to work investigating Caroline's finances. If she'd been embezzling from Lyra's father's estate before his death, and there was every reason to believe she had, there would be a trail. Account transfers, forged documents, something they could use. They also hired a private investigator to look into the school fire. Someone discreet, someone who could find witnesses without alerting Caroline to the investigation. It was a waiting game, a slow, agonizing process of gathering evidence while pretending to be cowed. And every day, Lyra felt the pressure building. She threw herself into estate work with renewed fury, reorganized the household accounts to make the blackmail payments less conspicuous, met with tenants to reassure them that the estate was stable, that nothing was wrong, smiled until her face ached. At night, she collapsed into bed in the guest wing and stared at the ceiling, counting the ways everything could go wrong. She didn't see much of Alistair. They maintained the careful distance he'd mandated, separate wings, minimal contact, interactions limited to business. But sometimes, late at night, she'd hear footsteps in the corridor outside her room, pacing, back and forth, back and forth. He couldn't sleep either. 3 weeks into their investigation, the private investigator reported back. He'd found a witness, a groundskeeper who'd seen someone near the school the night before the fire, someone matching Caroline's description. It wasn't enough for an arrest, but it was a start. The solicitor had also uncovered irregularities in the estate accounts from before Lyra's father's death, large withdrawals, transfers to accounts Caroline controlled. Nothing definitive yet, But the pattern was damning. They were building a case, slowly, carefully, and then everything exploded. Duchess. The letter arrived on a Thursday morning. Lyra was in the office reviewing quarterly projections when Mrs. Greaves brought it in. "From your stepmother," the housekeeper said. Her hands were shaking. Lyra's stomach dropped. It wasn't time for another payment yet. Caroline had no reason to write unless... She tore open the envelope. The letter inside was longer than usual, more detailed, and absolutely devastating. "Dearest Lyra, I'm writing to inform you of a change in circumstances. I've recently become aware that you and the Duke have been making inquiries about me, hiring investigators, asking questions. I'm disappointed. I thought we had an understanding. Since you've chosen to break our agreement, I'm afraid I must take action to protect myself. Enclosed, you'll find copies of certain documents, correspondence between you and the Duke, that I believe the authorities would find quite interesting, particularly the parts where you discuss methods of circumventing my lawful claims on your father's estate. These documents are, of course, fabrications, but they're very convincing fabrications. And once I deliver them to the constabulary, along with testimony from several witnesses I've carefully prepared, you'll find yourself facing charges of fraud and embezzlement. The trial alone will destroy what's left of your reputation. The Thornwick name will be dragged through every scandal sheet in London, and the Duke, poor blind Duke Thornwick, will be revealed as either a co-conspirator or a fool who couldn't control his own wife. Unless, of course, you'd like to reconsider our arrangement. New terms: £20,000 immediately, followed by £10,000 per quarter. In exchange, these documents disappear, and we never speak of this unpleasantness again. You have 48 hours to decide. Choose wisely." With love, Caroline Lyra read the letter 3 times. Each word was a nail in her coffin. Caroline had known, had somehow discovered their investigation and prepared a counterstrike, and now she had them completely trapped. If they refused to pay, she'd destroy them both with forged evidence. If they paid, they'd be bankrupt within a year. There was no winning move. Lyra stood on shaking legs and went to find Alistair. "Tobo?" He was in the library, listening to something Mrs. Greaves was reading aloud. When Lyra entered, the housekeeper stopped mid-sentence. "Leave us," Alistair said. Mrs. Greaves left without argument. Lyra crossed the room and handed him the letter. "You need to hear this." She read it aloud, every damning word, watched his expression go from confusion to fury to something that looked horribly like resignation. When she finished, he was silent for a long time. Then, "She's outplayed us. Yes? If we pay, we're admitting defeat. We'll be funding her for the rest of our lives. Yes. And if we don't pay, she destroys us. The forged documents, the false testimony, it doesn't matter that none of it's real. The scandal alone will be enough." Lyra sank into the chair across from him. "We can't fight this. We don't have time to gather enough evidence to counter her claims. And even if we could, the damage would already be done." Alistair's hands clenched. "So we just surrender?" "I don't see another option. There's always another option." "Like what? Murder? Because short of that, I don't—" "We give her the estate." Lyra's breath caught. "What?" "We sign everything over to her. The lands, the accounts, all of it. In exchange for her silence and a guarantee that she'll leave us alone." "Alistair, no. This is your family's legacy. You can't just—" "I can if it means protecting you." He stood, moving to the window. "The estate is stone and wood. It can be rebuilt. But if Caroline destroys your reputation, if she has you arrested on false charges—" His voice went rough. "I can't let that happen. We'd have nothing, no money, no home. We'd have each other." The words hung in the air between them, simple, devastating. Lyra felt tears building. "You hate me. You said—" "I know what I said. And I was wrong." Alistair turned and his unseeing eyes found hers with that unnerving precision. "I've been wrong about a lot of things. About you. About us. About what matters. And I'm not going to compound those mistakes by letting your stepmother destroy you to save a pile of rocks and land that means nothing without someone to share it with." "You mean that?" "I've never meant anything more." Lyra crossed to him, taking his hands. "We can't let her win. She's already won, Lyra. The question is whether we're going to drag this out until she destroys us completely, or whether we're going to cut our losses and walk away with something intact." And what would that something be? Alistair pulled her closer until they were standing nose to nose. Each other. If you'll still have me. After everything I've said, everything I've done. Yes. The word came out without hesitation. Yes, I'll have you. But not like this. Not if it means giving up everything you've worked for. Then what do you propose? Lyra's mind raced. There had to be a way. Some angle Caroline hadn't considered. Some weakness they could exploit. And then she saw it. We expose her, she said slowly. Not to the authorities, to society. What? Caroline's power comes from her reputation, from her position in London society. If we destroy that, if we make her a pariah, she loses everything. Lyra's hands tightened on his. The forged documents only work if people believe her. But if we reveal what she really is, a blackmailer, an arsonist, someone who'd threaten innocent children, no one will believe a word she says. And how exactly do we do that? We host a gathering, here, invite everyone who matters, and then we tell them the truth, all of it. The blackmail, the fire, the threats. We lay it all out in front of witnesses she can't intimidate or bribe. Alistair was silent for a long moment, then, that's incredibly risky. It's all we have. If it doesn't work, if people don't believe us, we'll look like delusional fools making wild accusations. I know. And Caroline will have even more ammunition to destroy us. I know that too. Lyra took a breath. But I'd rather go down fighting than spend the rest of my life paying tribute to that woman. Wouldn't you? Alistair's expression shifted. Something that might have been pride flickered across his face. You've become ruthless, he said. I learned from the best. He smiled, a real smile, the first she'd seen in weeks. All right, we do this your way. We gather the wolves and see if we can turn them against Caroline instead of us. There's one problem. Only one? We have 48 hours, organizing a gathering that quickly. Leave that to me. Alistair was already moving toward the door. Mrs. Greaves, I need you immediately. The housekeeper appeared within seconds, as if she'd been waiting just outside. Send riders to every estate within 50 miles. I'm hosting an emergency gathering tomorrow night. Make it clear that attendance is not optional. I'm calling in every favor I'm owed. He turned back to Lyra. You focus on the evidence. Gather every letter, every document, everything we have on Caroline. We're going to need it all. Lyra nodded, her heart hammering. This was insane, desperate, exactly the kind of gamble that could destroy them both. But it was also the first time since this nightmare began that she felt like they had a chance. She spent the rest of the day organizing their case. Every letter Caroline had sent, the witness statement from the groundskeeper, the solicitor's findings on the embezzlement. She laid it all out like evidence at trial, arranged in chronological order, each piece damning in its own way. By evening, she had a file thick enough to condemn Caroline 10 times over, if anyone believed them. The gathering came together with terrifying speed. By the next afternoon, carriages were already arriving, local gentry, minor nobility, everyone Alistair had summoned with promises and threats. The ballroom filled with curious, anxious faces. Lyra stood at the top of the stairs watching them arrive and felt her stomach twist. This was it. Their one chance. If they failed tonight, if Caroline managed to spin this into another weapon against them, it was over. Ready? Alistair appeared at her elbow, looking devastating in formal black. No, but let's do it anyway. They descended together. The room fell silent when they entered. Lyra could feel every eye on them, could hear the whispers starting to build. She forced herself to keep walking, to maintain composure, until they reached the center of the ballroom. Alistair raised his hand, and the murmuring stopped. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, he said. His voice carried across the room with absolute authority. I know many of you are wondering why you're here. The answer is simple. I need witnesses. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Witnesses to what? Someone called out. To a confession. Alistair turned and his unseeing eyes somehow found Lyra in the crowd. My wife is going to tell you a story. I suggest you listen carefully, because what happens next depends entirely on whether you believe her. He stepped back, giving Lyra the floor. She took a breath, looked out at the sea of faces, some curious, some hostile, all waiting. My name is Lyra Thornwick, she said, and I'm being blackmailed by my stepmother. The room exploded into sound. Lyra raised her voice over the noise. For the past month, Caroline Vale has been extorting money from this estate. She's threatened arson, violence, and ruin if we don't comply with her demands. And tonight, I'm asking all of you to serve as witnesses when I refuse to pay her another penny. This is outrageous. Lady Morrison stood, her face flushed. You can't make accusations like this without proof. I have proof. Lyra held up the file. Letters. Witness statements. Financial records showing embezzlement from my late father's estate. Everything you need to see that Caroline Vale is a criminal who's been hiding behind respectability for years. Then take it to the authorities, someone shouted. I would, except my stepmother has prepared forged documents that make it look like I'm the criminal. She's planning to have me arrested within the week unless I continue paying tribute. Lyra's voice shook. So I'm making this public. I'm putting it in front of all of you so that when she tries to destroy me, when she claims I'm a liar and a fraud, you'll know the truth. The room was silent now. Lyra could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. Some looked skeptical. Some looked intrigued. A few looked genuinely sympathetic. May I see this evidence? Lord Pemberton stepped forward. An older man, respected, known for his fairness. Lyra handed him the file. He read through it slowly, methodically. The silence stretched unbearably. Finally, he looked up. This is damning, he said, if true. It is true, Lyra said, every word. But you understand what you're asking? If we support you in this, if we publicly oppose Mrs. Vale, we're making ourselves targets. She's well-connected, vindictive. I know. And I'm not asking anyone to fight my battles. I'm just asking you to remember what you saw here tonight, to remember what I said, so that when Caroline tries to twist the narrative, when she claims I'm making wild accusations out of spite, you'll know better. Lord Pemberton looked at Alistair. And you, Your Grace? You support your wife's account? Completely, Alistair said. I've seen the letters, examined the evidence. Caroline Vale is exactly what my wife says she is, a blackmailer and a criminal. And I'm asking all of you as my peers to stand witness to that truth. Another long silence. Then Lord Pemberton handed the file back to Lyra. I believe you, he said. The words hit like a thunderbolt. One by one, others in the room began to nod, to murmur agreement. Not everyone. Lady Morrison still looked furious, and several others were clearly reserving judgment. But enough. Enough to create doubt. Enough to make Caroline's accusations look questionable. Enough to give them a fighting chance. Lyra felt tears building, but forced them back. Thank you, all of you, for listening, for... The ballroom doors slammed open. Caroline stood in the entrance, resplendent in crimson silk, her expression absolutely murderous. Well, she said, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. Isn't this cozy? A whole room full of witnesses to my stepdaughters. Well, Caroline said, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. Isn't this cozy? A whole room full of witnesses to my stepdaughter's delusions. She moved into the ballroom with the confidence of a woman who'd never lost a battle. Every eye tracked her progress. The crimson silk of her gown seemed to drink the candlelight, making her look like something carved from blood and fury. Lyra's hands clenched on the evidence file. You weren't invited. No? How rude of me to crash your little performance. Caroline's smile was all teeth. Though I must say, darling, you've outdone yourself. Accusing me of blackmail in front of the entire county? That takes real nerve, or real stupidity. I haven't decided which yet. It's not an accusation if it's true. True, Caroline laughed. The sound was razor-edged. Is that what you're calling this fantasy you've concocted? Blackmail, arson, embezzlement. You paint quite the picture of me as some kind of criminal mastermind. She turned to address the room. My stepdaughter has always had an active imagination. Even as a child, she'd make up stories to avoid responsibility for her own failings. I see that hasn't changed. Lord Pemberton stepped forward. Mrs. Vale, we've seen the evidence. The letters you sent, forgeries. Obviously. Caroline's tone was dismissive. Anyone can fake a signature, write a few threatening lines and claim I sent them. Where's the proof? Where are the witnesses to these alleged crimes? We have a witness to the school fire, Lyra said. A groundskeeper who saw you, saw someone who might have resembled me, in the dark, from a distance. Caroline's eyes glittered. That's hardly concrete evidence, is it? And as for the financial irregularities in my late husband's estate, I was executor.
I made decisions to protect Lyra's inheritance from her own reckless spending. If she's too foolish to understand that, it's not my fault. The room shifted. Lyra could feel it, the doubt creeping back in. Caroline was too smooth, too prepared. She'd anticipated every accusation and had her defenses ready. "You're lying," Lyra said. Her voice shook with rage. "Everything you've said is a lie. Prove it." 2 words, delivered with absolute confidence. Because Caroline knew, she'd always known, that proof was the one thing Lyra didn't have. Not enough of it. Not the kind that would stand up in court or convince a room full of skeptics who wanted to believe the respectable widow over the desperate young bride. Alistair moved to Lyra's side. His hand found hers, squeezing once. "You made a mistake coming here," he said. His voice was cold, level. "You should have stayed in London, where your reputation still meant something. And you should have kept your blind mouth shut, Your Grace." Caroline's tone dripped venom. "But since we're here, let's discuss your role in this little scheme. Did you know your wife has been embezzling from your estate, transferring funds to fake charities, setting up accounts under false names?" "That's a lie," Lyra's voice cracked. "Is it? Because I have documents that say otherwise. Bank statements, transfer records, all in your handwriting." Caroline pulled a folder from her reticule. "I was planning to deliver these to the authorities tomorrow, but since you've so kindly gathered witnesses, perhaps we should review them now?" She moved toward Lord Pemberton, offering the folder. Lyra's mind raced. Those documents didn't exist yesterday. Caroline must have had them prepared as insurance, forged evidence to counter anything Lyra might present. And they'd look damning because Caroline was good at her craft. She'd spent years perfecting the art of manipulation. "Don't look at those," Lyra said desperately. "They're fake. She had them made to frame me. Oh, the same way you claim I faked the letters accusing me?" Caroline's smile widened. "It seems we're at an impasse, darling. Your word against mine. And I wonder, whose word carries more weight in this room? A respected widow who's been part of London society for decades? Or a girl who married a blind duke for his money and is now trying to cover her tracks by accusing the person who could expose her?" The room murmured. Lyra could see it happening in real time, Caroline's narrative taking hold, doubt spreading like poison through water. "That's not what happened," Lyra said, but her voice sounded weak even to her own ears. "Isn't it?" Caroline turned to the assembled crowd. "Let me tell you what really happened. My stepdaughter married the Duke of Blackthorn under false pretenses. She saw a vulnerable man, a man who couldn't see her lies, and she took advantage. She's been systematically looting his estate while pretending to manage it. And when I discovered her scheme and confronted her, she decided to strike first, to destroy my reputation before I could reveal her crimes." "No." Alistair's voice cut through like steel. "That's not what happened, and I'm not the fool you think I am." Caroline's expression flickered, just for a second. "Your Grace, I understand you want to defend your wife. I'm not defending her, I'm stating facts." He moved forward, and despite his blindness, he navigated the room with absolute precision. "You made a critical error tonight, Mrs. Vale. You revealed yourself. Because a truly innocent woman wouldn't have appeared here with pre-prepared documents to counter accusations she couldn't have known we'd make. You came ready for war because you knew we had evidence, which means you've been monitoring us, preparing countermeasures, acting exactly like the guilty party would act." The room went silent. Caroline's smile slipped. "Furthermore," Alistair continued, "your story has holes. You claim Lyra has been embezzling, but my solicitor has audited every transaction, every account. There are no irregularities except the payments to you. Payments my wife made under duress because you threatened to destroy us both. Your solicitor is obviously in on the scheme. My solicitor is Theodore Blackwood, former magistrate, a man whose integrity is beyond question." Alistair's voice was iron. "And he'll testify under oath that the only financial malfeasance he's discovered is yours. The embezzlement from Lyra's father's estate, the funds you diverted into private accounts, the false claims you submitted to drain what was left of his fortune before selling Lyra to me like livestock." Caroline's face went white, then red. "How dare you? How dare I? How dare you?" Alistair's fury was a palpable thing. "You came into my house, threatened my wife, burned down a school full of children, and you thought you could walk into this room and lie your way out of consequences. But here's what you didn't count on, Mrs. Vale. I may be blind, but I can see you more clearly than anyone else in this room, and what I see is a woman who's terrified,
Because for the first time in your miserable life, you're not in control. The silence was deafening. Caroline's hand shook as she clutched the forged documents. You have no proof. No real evidence. Just the word of a girl who's desperate to avoid prosecution and a blind man who can't see what's right in front of him. Then let's settle this. Lyra's voice rang out, clear, strong. Right now, in front of everyone. Caroline turned. Settle what? Your accusations, my accusations, all of it. Lyra held up the evidence file. You say these are lies. I say your documents are forgeries. So let's have them examined by experts, by magistrates, by anyone with the authority to determine truth from fiction, and whoever's lying faces the full consequences of the law. A charming idea, but I'm not interested in playing your games. Then you're admitting you're lying. I'm admitting nothing. I don't have to prove my innocence to you or anyone else. Caroline's composure cracked further. I'm leaving, and when I return to London, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of manipulative little... You're not going anywhere, the new voice came from the doorway. A man in a constable's uniform stepped into the ballroom, flanked by 2 deputies. Caroline froze. Mrs. Caroline Vale? The constable asked. Yes. What is this about? I have a warrant for your arrest, charges of arson, extortion, and embezzlement. He moved toward her, hand on his truncheon. You'll need to come with us. The room erupted, voices overlapping, people surging forward to get a better view. Caroline backed up, her face a mask of rage and disbelief. This is a setup. They planned this. We have evidence, ma'am, including testimony from a Mr. Harold Griggs, who claims you paid him £50 to set fire to a school in Blackthorn Village. He's willing to testify in exchange for leniency. Caroline's expression went from outraged to absolutely murderous. She spun on Lyra. You did this. You found him. You turned him against me. I didn't have to turn him, Lyra said quietly. He turned himself in. Because burning down a building full of children haunted him. Because he has a conscience. Something you wouldn't understand. You sanctimonious little bitch. You think you've won? You think this is over? Caroline's voice rose to a shriek. I'll destroy you. I'll make sure every newspaper in England knows what you are. You'll do nothing, Alistair's voice cut through her tirade, because you're going to prison, and whatever influence you had in London society is gone, burned away the moment you were arrested in front of 50 witnesses. The constable took Caroline's arm. She jerked away, her face twisted with hatred. This isn't over, she hissed at Lyra. You hear me? It's not over. I'll find a way. Take her, the constable said to his deputies. They moved in. Caroline fought them, screaming obscenities, clawing at their hands. It took both men to restrain her. The room watched in horrified fascination as the elegant, composed widow was dragged toward the door, still shrieking threats. I'll ruin you, both of you. You'll regret this. The door slammed shut. Her voice faded. Silence fell over the ballroom like snow. Seats. Lyra stood in the center of it all, her whole body shaking. She'd won. They'd actually won. Caroline was gone, arrested, facing real consequences for the first time in her life. It didn't feel real. Lord Pemberton cleared his throat. Well, that was unexpected. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. The tension broke. People began talking again, processing what they'd just witnessed. Lyra felt Alistair's hand on her shoulder. Breathe. She realized she'd been holding her breath. Let it out in a rush. Is it really over? She whispered. The worst of it. There'll be a trial, testimony. But yes, she can't hurt us anymore. Lyra turned into his arms, not caring who saw. Alistair held her, and she felt the tremors running through him too. They'd both been so tightly wound for so long that actually winning felt impossible. Your Grace, Duchess? Lord Pemberton approached. I owe you both an apology. I didn't want to believe it. The accusation seemed so extreme. But clearly, you don't owe us anything, Alistair said. You listened. You reviewed the evidence. That's more than we could have asked for. Others approached, offering congratulations, support. A few looked embarrassed, people who doubted them, who'd been ready to side with Caroline. But most seemed genuine in their relief that the truth had come out. Lady Morrison was conspicuously absent. She'd slipped out sometime during the confrontation. The gathering dispersed slowly. Carriages departed. By midnight, Blackthorn was empty except for the household staff cleaning up. Lyra stood in the entrance hall, exhausted beyond measure. Every muscle ached, her head pounded. But beneath the exhaustion was something she hadn't felt in months: relief. "You should rest," Alistair said. He looked just as drained. "It's been a long night." "I don't think I can sleep." "Neither can I." They stood in awkward silence. So much had changed in the past few hours. The barriers between them had cracked during the fight with Caroline, but Lyra didn't know if that meant anything. If it was temporary solidarity against a common enemy or something more. "I'm sorry," she said finally. Alistair frowned. "For what?" "For everything. For the Harrington dinner. For making everything worse. For—" "Stop." He moved closer. "You saved us tonight. That gathering, the evidence, finding the witness, that was all you. I would have just paid her off and hoped she eventually went away. You were the one who fought back." "We fought back. Together." "Yes, we did." His hand found hers. "And I think we should keep doing that. Fighting together, if you're willing." Lyra's throat went tight. "I'm willing, but I need to know, are we still just business partners, or are we—" "I don't know what we are," Alistair interrupted. "I don't know how to be a husband, how to be anything other than what I've been. But I know I don't want to go back to how things were. Separate wings, careful distance, pretending you don't matter." "Do I matter?" "Yes." The word was raw. "More than I want you to. More than I know how to handle. But yes." Lyra stepped closer until they were barely a breath apart. "Then show me." Alistair's hands came up, cupping her face. "I'm not good at this." "Neither am I. We'll figure it out." He kissed her, soft at first, then deeper, like he was trying to say everything he couldn't put into words. Lyra melted into it, her hands fisting in his shirt. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Alistair rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight," he said. "Not in the guest wing, not in separate rooms. With me." Yes, they made it to his quarters before the adrenaline wore off, before exhaustion hit like a hammer. They collapsed into bed, still half-dressed, tangled together, and for the first time since their wedding night, it felt like something other than obligation. It felt like choice. Lyra fell asleep with Alistair's arm around her waist, his breath warm against her neck, and thought that maybe, just maybe, they'd actually survived this. The trial took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of testimony, evidence, and Caroline's increasingly desperate attempts to discredit everyone who spoke against her. But Harold Griggs's confession was damning. He described in detail how Caroline had approached him, how much she'd paid, how she'd convinced him the school was empty, and it was just a harmless prank. The embezzlement evidence was equally clear. Alistair's solicitor presented transaction records showing systematic theft from Lyra's father's estate. Accounts Caroline had hidden, properties she'd sold and pocketed the proceeds. By the end, even Caroline's own lawyers looked disgusted. The verdict came down on a gray Tuesday afternoon. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing was set for the following week. Lyra sat in the courtroom and watched Caroline's face as the foreman read the verdict. Watched the fury, the disbelief, the moment when reality finally crashed through her delusions and she understood that she'd lost. Caroline's eyes found Lyra's across the courtroom. The hatred there was scorching. "This isn't over," she mouthed. Lyra looked away. Let the guards take Caroline back to her cell. Didn't watch as the woman who tormented her for years was led away in chains. It was over, whether Caroline accepted it or not. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Questions flew from every direction. Lyra ignored them all, letting Alistair guide her to their waiting carriage. They rode back to Blackthorn in silence. "How do you feel?" Alistair asked as the estate came into view. Lyra considered. "Empty. I thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated. But I just feel tired. That's normal. You've been fighting for so long. Now that the fight's over, you don't know what to do with yourself." "Is that how you felt? After Eleanor?" Alistair was quiet for a moment. "After Eleanor, I felt nothing. I'd already hollowed myself out by then, but watching Caroline get sentenced, it felt different, like closing a door that should have been closed years ago." The carriage rolled to a stop. They climbed out, and Lyra looked up at Blackthorn's dark stone facade. A month ago, this place had felt like a prison. Now it felt like home. Strange how things changed. Mrs. Greaves met them at the door. "Your Graces," There's someone here to see you. A young woman. She says she's the Duchess's sister. Lyra's breath caught. Margaret? She's waiting in the drawing room. Lyra didn't remember running. Just suddenly she was there, throwing open the door. And yes, there was Margaret. 17 years old, auburn hair like Caroline's, but a face that was pure sweetness. Her sister looked up, and relief flooded her features. Lyra, oh, thank God. I was so worried. Margaret rushed forward, throwing her arms around Lyra. I heard about the trial, about everything Caroline did. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Lyra held her sister tight, feeling tears build. It's all right. You're here now. That's what matters. I ran away. From London. Caroline had me engaged to some horrible old man who... Margaret pulled back, her eyes red. It doesn't matter. I'm here, and I'm not going back, not ever. You don't have to. You can stay here. With us. Lyra looked at Alistair, who'd appeared in the doorway. Can't she? Alistair smiled. Of course. Any family of yours is welcome here. Margaret looked between them, her expression cautious. Are you happy? Caroline said terrible things about your marriage, about the Duke, but you seem... We're figuring it out, Lyra said, day by day. That's all anyone can do. They spent the evening catching up. Margaret told stories about London society, about Caroline's increasingly erratic behavior before the arrest. Lyra told her about the estate, the school, the work she'd been doing. It felt normal, almost peaceful. That should have been Lyra's first warning. The attack came 3 days later. Lyra was in the gardens, reviewing plans for rebuilding the school, when she heard shouting from the house. She looked up, confused. Then she saw the smoke. Black, billowing, pouring from the east wing windows. Fire. Lyra ran, dropped her papers and sprinted toward the house, her heart hammering. Not again. Not after everything. She burst through the doors to chaos. Servants running, Mrs. Greaves shouting orders, and smoke, thick, choking smoke, filling the corridors. Where's the Duke? Lyra grabbed the housekeeper's arm. Where's Alistair? His study. He went to his study 20 minutes ago, and we can't... Mrs. Greaves coughed. We can't reach him. The east wing is completely engulfed. No. Lyra turned toward the stairs. Mrs. Greaves grabbed her. You can't go up there. The fire's too strong. He can't see the flames. He won't know which way to run. Lyra ripped free. I'm getting him out. She hit the stairs at a dead run. The heat slammed into her like a wall. Smoke burned her lungs. She couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. But she knew this house. Had memorized every corridor during her months here. She knew the way to Alistair's study. The smoke got thicker. Lyra pulled her shawl over her mouth and nose, kept moving. Behind her, she could hear people shouting, telling her to come back. But she wouldn't. Not without him. The study door was ahead. Flames licked at the frame. Lyra threw her weight against it, locked. Alistair? She pounded on the wood. Alistair, open the door. No response. Lyra looked around desperately, found a decorative vase on a nearby table, smashed it against the door handle. Once, twice, the lock gave. She stumbled into the study. Alistair was on the floor near his desk, unconscious, blood on his temple where something had hit him, probably falling debris. No, no, no! Lyra dropped beside him, checking for a pulse. There, weak, but there. Alistair, wake up. We have to move. He didn't respond. The ceiling groaned. Lyra looked up and saw flames crawling across the beams. They had seconds, maybe less. She grabbed Alistair under the arms and pulled. He was heavy, all muscle and dead weight, but she hauled him toward the door, inch by inch. Her shoulders screamed, her lungs burned. Behind them, part of the ceiling collapsed. Sparks showered down. Lyra pulled harder, got him into the corridor. The smoke was so thick now she couldn't see the stairs. Couldn't see anything. But she knew the way, had walked it 100 times. She dragged Alistair toward where the stairs should be. Her vision swam. Black spots danced at the edges. Not much time. Not much air. Her foot hit the first step. She nearly sobbed with relief. Down. One step at a time, dragging Alistair, trying not to let his head hit the stairs, trying to breathe through the smoke. Halfway down, hands grabbed her. Servants. They took Alistair's weight, carried him the rest of the way. Someone wrapped a blanket around Lyra's shoulders, guided her outside.
Fresh air hit like a blessing. Lyra collapsed on the lawn, coughing until she thought her lungs would tear apart. When she could finally breathe again, she looked up. Blackthorn was burning. The entire east wing was engulfed. Flames reached toward the sky like grasping hands. Servants formed bucket lines, but it was hopeless. The fire was too strong, too fast. "Alistair," Lyra's voice was a rasp. "Where?" "Here," someone pointed. He was 10 feet away, stretched out on the grass, still unconscious. A physician was already working on him, checking his injuries. Lyra crawled over, took his hand. "Is he... Oh.
He'll live. Concussion, smoke inhalation, but he'll live." The physician looked at her. "You saved his life, Duchess. Another minute, and..." He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Lyra squeezed Alistair's hand and watched their home burn. The fire burned for 6 hours. By the time it was finally extinguished, the east wing was completely destroyed. Alistair's study, the library, a third of the household rooms, all gone, just blackened stone and ash. The constable arrived at dawn, started asking questions. "How did it start?" he asked Mrs. Greaves. "I don't know. 1 minute everything was fine. The next, flames everywhere." "Any idea what might have caused it?" "No, unless..." The housekeeper paused, looked at Lyra. "Unless it was deliberate." The constable's expression sharpened. "You think this was arson?" "I don't know what else it could be. Fires don't just start themselves. They do if there's faulty wiring, or unattended candles, or... We're careful about those things. Very careful. Especially after..." Mrs. Greaves stopped. "After what?" "After Mrs. Vale set fire to the village school," Lyra said quietly. "This is her doing, somehow, even from prison." The constable frowned. "That seems unlikely, Duchess. Mrs. Vale is locked in a cell. She has no access to She has money, connections. She could have hired someone." Lyra's hands clenched. She swore this wasn't over, that she'd destroy us. And now half our house is gone. "I'll investigate, but without proof." "Then find proof," Lyra's voice cracked. "Because if this was Caroline, she's not going to stop. She'll keep trying until we're dead or ruined, or both. And I can't..." She stopped, took a breath. "I can't lose him. Not like this." The constable promised to look into it, but Lyra could see the skepticism in his eyes. He didn't believe her. No one did, except Alistair. He woke around noon, groggy and disoriented. Lyra was sitting beside his bed. They'd moved him to the west wing, away from the damage, when his eyes opened. "Lyra?" "I'm here." He tried to sit up, winced. "What happened?" "Fire. The east wing. You were trapped in your study." His expression went blank, processing. "The library?" "Gone." "I'm sorry." Alistair was silent for a long time. Then, "How bad?" "A third of the house will rebuild, but it's..." Lyra's voice broke. "It's bad." "And you? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. Smoke inhalation. Nothing serious. You came into a burning building for me." "Of course I did." "You could have died." "So could you." Lyra took his hand. "And I wasn't going to let that happen." Alistair pulled her closer until she was half lying on the bed beside him. "Caroline did this." "I think so, but I can't prove it." "We'll find a way. We'll..." He stopped, coughed. "We'll handle it. Together." "Together," Lyra echoed. But even as she said it, she felt the dread building, because Caroline had proven she could reach them. Even locked in a cell, even facing prison, she could still hurt them. And if they didn't find a way to stop her, truly stop her, this would never end. Mug. The investigation turned up nothing. No evidence of arson, no witnesses. The fire department declared it an accident, probably caused by faulty wiring in the old wing. Lyra didn't believe it, neither did Alistair. But without proof, there was nothing they could do, except wait for the next attack. It came 2 weeks later. Margaret was in the village, shopping for supplies. She was alone, insisted she didn't need an escort for such a short trip. She'd be gone an hour at most. She didn't come back. When the carriage returned empty, when the driver said he'd left her at the market and she never showed for the return trip, Lyra felt her world tilt. "Find her," she told the servants. "Search the entire village, every shop, every..." "Duchess." A boy ran up, out of breath. "Got a message for you. Man gave me a shilling to deliver it. He held out a sealed envelope. Dearest Lyra, I believe I have something that belongs to you. A lovely young girl with auburn hair, so sweet, so innocent. I'm willing to return her for a price. £50,000. Delivered to the address below within 24 hours. Come alone. Tell anyone, the authorities, your husband, anyone at all. And your sister dies. The clock is ticking. See. Lyra read the letter 3 times. Each word was a knife. Caroline had Margaret. Caroline had her sister. And if Lyra didn't comply, if she didn't deliver the impossible sum Caroline demanded, Margaret would die. She looked up at Alistair, who'd appeared at her side. What is it? He asked. His voice was tight with concern. Lyra opened her mouth, started to tell him, then stopped. Tell anyone and your sister dies. Caroline meant it. She'd proven she was willing to burn buildings, destroy lives, commit any atrocity to get what she wanted. And now she had Margaret. If Lyra told Alistair, if they went to the authorities, Caroline would know, and Margaret would pay the price. Lyra made her decision in that frozen instant, the hardest decision of her life. Nothing, she lied. Just a note from the dressmaker about Margaret's fitting. Alistair frowned. Are you sure? You look... I'm fine. Just worried about Margaret. I'm sure she'll turn up soon. She forced herself to smile, to keep her voice steady, to hide the terror clawing at her throat. And that night, while Alistair slept, Lyra crept from their bed. She gathered what money she could find in the household safe. £12,000. Not nearly enough, but it would have to do. She wrote a note, short. To the point, I'm coming. I have 12,000. It's all I could gather. Please don't hurt her. I'll get you the rest. Just please. She left it unsigned, sent it via courier to the address Caroline had provided. Then she waited. The response came 6 hours later. 12,000 is insufficient, but I'm willing to negotiate. Come to the old mill outside the village. Tonight, midnight. Come alone or she dies. And Lyra, don't bother trying to be clever. I have people watching. I'll know if you bring help. Lyra looked at the clock. 9 p.m., 3 hours. She had 3 hours to figure out how to save her sister. 3 hours to decide if she was willing to sacrifice everything she'd built with Alistair. The trust, the fragile partnership, the beginning of something real to save Margaret's life. There was no question. Lyra went to her room, changed into dark clothing, tucked a knife into her boot, a small blade easily hidden. Probably useless against whatever Caroline had planned, but it was something. At 11:30, she crept from the house. The walk to the mill took 20 minutes. The building loomed against the night sky, abandoned for years, its windows like dead eyes. Lyra approached slowly, every nerve screaming danger. The door hung open. An invitation. She stepped inside. Hello, Lyra. The voice came from the shadows. Caroline emerged, looking haggard but triumphant. She wasn't alone. 2 men flanked her, hired muscle, probably, and behind them, tied to a chair, Margaret! Her sister looked terrified but unharmed, gagged, tears streaming down her face. Let her go, Lyra said. Please. I brought money. £12,000. Yes, I got your note. Caroline smiled. It's a start, but nowhere near what you owe me. I don't owe you anything, don't you? You destroyed my life, had me arrested, humiliated in front of everyone who matters. And you think you can walk away from that? Just rebuild your little estate and play happy family with your blind duke? Caroline moved closer. No, you're going to pay. For everything. What do you want? I want you to suffer the way I've suffered. I want you to know what it's like to lose everything. Caroline gestured to Margaret. Your sister goes free when you sign over the Blackthorn estate to me. Every acre, every pound, everything. Lyra's breath caught. That's insane. I can't. You can. You have power of attorney while the Duke is recovering. Sign the papers I've prepared, transfer everything to me, and your sister lives. And if I refuse, then she dies. Right here. Right now. And you get to live with that for the rest of your miserable life. Lyra looked at Margaret, at her sister's terrified eyes, at the 2 men standing ready to carry out Caroline's orders if she gave the word. She thought of Alistair, of everything they'd built, everything they'd fought for. She thought of Blackthorn, the estate that had become home, the tenants who depended on them, the school they were rebuilding, all of it, gone. Handed over to a woman who'd burn it to ash out of pure spite.
or Margaret would die. Lyra closed her eyes. I'm sorry, she thought. I'm so sorry, Alistair. Give me the papers, she said. Caroline's smile widened. She produced a document. Lyra scanned it quickly. Everything Caroline had promised. Total transfer of the estate. Blackthorn. All of it. Sign here. Caroline held out a pen. Lyra took it, held it over the paper, and then the door exploded inward. Alistair stood in the entrance, flanked by a dozen men, constables, servants, anyone he could gather on short notice. His expression was absolutely murderous. Step away from my wife, he said. Caroline's face went white. How did I know? Alistair moved forward with predatory precision. Because I'm not an idiot. Because I know my wife well enough to recognize when she's lying. And because I had her followed the moment she left the house. This doesn't concern you. This is between me and... It concerns me when you kidnap my sister-in-law and attempt to extort my estate. Alistair's voice was thunder. Constable, arrest her. Kidnapping, attempted extortion, arson. Add it to the list of charges she's already facing. The constables moved in. Caroline backed up, her hired men already surrendering. She looked at Lyra with pure hatred. You brought him. I told you not to... She didn't bring me. Alistair cut her off. I followed her. And you just added years to your sentence by threatening a member of the peerage. No, Caroline's voice rose. No, you can't. I won't. They dragged her out, still screaming. Lyra stood frozen. The pen fell from her fingers. Alistair crossed to her in 3 strides. Are you hurt? I'm fine, but Margaret... Already being freed, he turned toward the constables. Get her out of those ropes and fetch a physician. I want her checked for injuries. Then he turned back to Lyra, and his expression was unreadable. You lied to me, he said quietly. I had to. She said, I know what she said. I read the letter. He held up the note Caroline had sent. You dropped it. I found it after you left. Lyra's chest tightened. Then you know why I had to come alone. I know you thought you had to come alone, but you were wrong. His hands found her shoulders, gripped tight. You should have trusted me. We could have handled this together. Instead, you were about to sign away everything we've built to save my sister. What choice did I have? You had the choice to believe I would help you, to believe that I... He stopped, took a breath. Do you have any idea what it did to me, watching you walk into this death trap alone, knowing that if I'd been 30 seconds later, you might have... His voice broke. Lyra felt tears spill over. I'm sorry. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk Margaret. So you risked yourself, risked us. Alistair pulled her against his chest. Don't ever do that again. Do you hear me? Don't ever lie to me like that again. I won't. I promise. I love you. The words hit like lightning. Lyra pulled back, stared at him. What? I love you. Alistair's hands cupped her face. I don't know when it happened. Probably before I wanted it to. But I love you, Lyra. And watching you walk into danger alone nearly destroyed me. You said you couldn't, that you'd never... I was wrong about everything. About you. About us. About what I was capable of feeling. He rested his forehead against hers. I love you, and I need you to promise me you'll never shut me out like that again. I promise. Lyra's voice shook. And I love you too. I have for a while. I just didn't think you wanted to hear it. I want to hear it every day for the rest of our lives. He kissed her, deep and desperate, like he was trying to convince himself she was really there, really safe. Around them, the constables were cleaning up, freeing Margaret, taking statements. But Lyra barely noticed, because she'd found something she thought she'd lost forever. She'd found home. The sentencing came 3 weeks later. Caroline was given 20 years for the accumulated charges. Arson, extortion, kidnapping, embezzlement. The judge called her a danger to society and utterly without remorse. Lyra attended the sentencing, watched Caroline being led away in chains. This time her stepmother didn't threaten, didn't scream, just looked at Lyra with dead eyes and let herself be dragged back to her cell. It was over, finally, truly over. Outside the courthouse, Alistair took Lyra's hand. How do you feel? He asked. Free, Lyra said, and she meant it. They returned to Blackthorn, to the estate they were rebuilding, to Margaret, who decided to stay and help with the reconstruction,
to a life that was messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. That night, Lyra stood in what was left of the library. Most of it was destroyed, but they'd salvaged some books, started cataloging what could be saved. Alistair found her there.
"What are you doing?" he asked. "Planning," Lyra gestured at the ruins.
"We're going to rebuild this, better than before, with better shelving, better organization, maybe even a section for the tenants to borrow from."
"A lending library?"
"Why not? Knowledge shouldn't be hoarded, and I think—" She paused. "I think your mother would have liked that." Alistair was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "She would have. She was always trying to improve things. Make them better for everyone.
"Like you."
Like us." He pulled her close, and they stood in the ruins of the old library, already envisioning what would rise in its place. It would take months to rebuild. Years, maybe. But they had time. And this time they'd build something that would last. Together. The rebuilding took 8 months. 8 months of stonemasons and carpenters, of debris hauled away by the wagon load, of watching Blackthorn slowly knit itself back together. The east wing rose from ash like something reborn. Stronger foundations, better ventilation, windows that let in light the old structure had never seen. Lyra oversaw most of it. She'd wake before dawn and spend the day with the foreman, reviewing plans, solving problems, making 1,000 small decisions that would determine whether the new wing felt like home or just expensive reconstruction. Her hands grew calloused, her skin darkened from hours in the sun. She looked nothing like the frightened girl who'd arrived in a rain-streaked carriage nearly a year ago. She looked like someone who'd earned her place here. Alistair worked beside her when he could. His days were consumed with estate business, the harvest, tenant disputes, supply negotiations that seemed never-ending. But evenings, he'd find her in whatever corner of the construction she'd claimed as an office, and they'd review progress together. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence while the sunset bled gold across the skeletal framework of the new library. Margaret helped where she could. She'd thrown herself into the school reconstruction with fierce determination, working with the village women to design a building that would serve not just children but the entire community. Reading rooms, meeting spaces, a small clinic in the back where a traveling physician could see patients. "It should be more than what it was," she told Lyra one afternoon. They were reviewing architectural drawings, Margaret's pencil flying across the paper as she sketched modifications. "Caroline destroyed the first one because it was just a school. But if we make it essential, if we make it something the whole village depends on, she can't touch it without destroying herself in the process." Lyra looked at her sister. At 17, Margaret had lost the softness that used to define her. Caroline's kidnapping had carved something hard into her, something that understood the world's capacity for cruelty and refused to be a victim of it. "When did you get so wise?" Lyra asked. "When I watched my sister nearly die for me." Margaret didn't look up from her sketches. "You taught me something that night at the mill, that sometimes the only way to survive is to fight back, even when you're terrified, even when the odds are impossible. I was stupid that night. I should have told Alistair. You did what you thought you had to do, and you survived. That's what matters." Margaret finally met her eyes. Besides, Alistair figured it out anyway. He always does. That was true. Alistair had developed an almost supernatural ability to read Lyra's moods. He knew when she was stressed before she did, knew when she needed space or company or just someone to sit with while she worked through whatever was eating at her. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like being known, like being seen, even by a man who couldn't see. The letter from the prison arrived in November. Mrs. Greaves brought it to Lyra while she was reviewing supply invoices. The housekeeper's expression was carefully neutral, but her hands trembled slightly as she held out the envelope. "From Newgate," she said. "From Mrs. Vale." Lyra's stomach dropped. She'd assumed Caroline was done, locked away. No longer a threat. The idea that her stepmother could still reach her from behind bars made her skin crawl. "Should I burn it?" Mrs. Greaves asked. Lyra almost said yes, almost consigned whatever poison Caroline had written to the flames unread. But curiosity won. "Leave it," she said. "I'll deal with it." After the housekeeper left, Lyra stared at the envelope for a long time. Then she broke the seal. The letter inside was surprisingly short. Caroline's usually elegant handwriting was cramped, hurried. "Lyra, I'm dying. Prison fever.
The physician says I have weeks at most. They're keeping me isolated so it doesn't spread to the other inmates. Appropriate, I suppose. I've spent my entire life keeping people at a distance. Now I die alone. I'm not writing to beg forgiveness. We both know I don't deserve it. I did terrible things to you, to your father, to everyone who trusted me. I justified it by telling myself I was protecting my position, ensuring my security. But the truth is simpler and uglier than that. I was afraid. Afraid of being poor again. Afraid of being powerless. Your father was my escape from a life I never wanted to return to, and when he died, when I realized how much debt he'd accumulated, how close I was to losing everything, I panicked. I stole from you because I saw you as competition for resources I couldn't afford to share. I manipulated you because controlling you felt like controlling my own fate. I'm not asking you to understand, just to know that I see it now, see what I became, and I'm sorry, for whatever that's worth. There's one more thing. Your father left something for you, a letter. I hid it after he died because it spoke of his love for you, his faith in your future. Things I couldn't stomach reading while I was busy stealing from you. I've enclosed it here. It's the only decent thing I've done in years. Perhaps the only decent thing I've ever done.
Die well, Lyra. Be better than I was. Caroline Lyra read the letter twice. Then she noticed the second piece of paper folded behind Caroline's note. Her hand shook as she unfolded it. Her father's handwriting. Familiar. Beloved. Dead for over a year, but still somehow alive on this page. My dearest Lyra, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for that. Sorry for leaving you to navigate this world without me. But I want you to know how proud I am of the woman you've become. You have your mother's courage and my stubbornness. A dangerous combination. You'll face challenges I can't protect you from. People who'll try to diminish you, control you, make you small. Don't let them. You're stronger than you know, braver than you believe. And you deserve a life filled with love and purpose, and the kind of happiness that comes from choosing your own path. I know Caroline will try to manage your inheritance. I've seen the way she looks at the estate books, the hunger in her eyes. If she offers you a marriage arrangement, be cautious. She doesn't always have your best interests at heart. But whatever happens, remember this. You are not defined by circumstance. You are defined by choice. Choose wisely. Choose courageously. Choose yourself. All my love, Father. Lyra's vision blurred. Tears splashed onto the paper, smearing the ink. She pressed the letter to her chest and let herself cry. For her father. For the warning he'd tried to give her. For the years she'd spent fighting battles he'd foreseen but couldn't prevent. And somewhere beneath the grief was something else. Something that felt like closure. Her father had believed in her. Even knowing Caroline's nature, even recognizing the danger, he'd trusted Lyra to survive. To choose her own path. She'd done that. Had chosen the hardest path imaginable and survived it anyway. Lyra? She looked up. Alistair stood in the doorway, his expression concerned. I heard you crying, he said. What happened? She told him. About Caroline's letter. Her father's. The apology that came too late and the blessing that came exactly when she needed it. Alistair listened without interrupting. When she finished, he crossed to her and pulled her into his arms. Do you want to see her? He asked. Before she dies? Lyra considered. Part of her wanted to. Wanted to look Caroline in the eye one last time and see if the remorse in that letter was real or just another manipulation. But a larger part, the part that had spent months rebuilding, healing, moving forward, didn't want to give Caroline even that much power. No, she said finally. She made her choices. I made mine, and I'm done letting her define my life. Are you sure? Yes. Lyra pulled back to look at him. Caroline wanted me to suffer, to be trapped by what she did to me. But I'm not trapped. I'm here, with you, building something she could never destroy. That's the only revenge I need. Alistair's expression softened. You've become formidable. I learned from the best. He smiled, kissed her forehead. What do you want to do with the letters? Lyra looked at her father's note, at Caroline's confession. 2 pieces of paper that represented her entire past, the love she'd lost and the cruelty she'd survived. I want to keep my father's letter, she said, and burn Caroline's. Not keep it as evidence, proof that she admitted she's dying. Whatever punishment she's facing now is worse than anything I could inflict. Lyra folded Caroline's letter carefully. And I don't want to carry her words with me. I want to be done. They burned the letter that night in the library fireplace, watched Caroline's cramped handwriting curl and blacken and disappear into ash. Lyra felt something release in her chest as the last corner caught fire. Done. Finally, blessedly done. Books. Caroline died 3 weeks later. The prison sent notice. A perfunctory letter stating that Caroline Vale, prisoner 4782, had succumbed to fever on the night of November 23rd. Her body would be interred in the prison cemetery unless family claimed it. No family claimed it. Lyra attended the burial anyway. Not out of love or even pity, but because someone should bear witness. Because even monsters deserved acknowledgement at the end. The prison cemetery was bleak. Rows of unmarked graves stretching across muddy ground. No flowers, no ceremony. Just a chaplain who read a quick prayer and 2 gravediggers who lowered Caroline's plain coffin into the earth without fanfare. Lyra stood at a distance and watched, Alistair beside her. Margaret had refused to come, still too raw from the kidnapping to face Caroline even in death. But Lyra needed this, needed to see the coffin covered with dirt, needed the finality. When it was over, when the gravediggers had filled the hole and moved on to the next burial, Lyra approached the grave. No headstone yet. Just disturbed earth and a wooden marker with Caroline's name and dates. I don't forgive you, Lyra said quietly. What you did, the people you hurt, that's beyond forgiveness. But I'm letting go of the anger, the hatred, because carrying it doesn't punish you. It only hurts me. The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the cemetery. I hope you found some peace at the end, Lyra continued. I hope dying gave you clarity about what matters. But whether it did or not, I'm done. You don't get any more of my life, any more of my energy. This is goodbye. For real this time. She turned and walked away. Alistair fell into step beside her. How do you feel? Lighter, Lyra said, and she meant it. The library opened on Christmas Eve. They'd finished it ahead of schedule, a minor miracle given the scope of reconstruction. The new space was magnificent. 2 stories tall with a spiral staircase connecting them. Windows that flooded the room with light, shelves organized by subject instead of the chaotic system Alistair's mother had used. And in the center, a reading area with comfortable chairs and a fireplace large enough to heat the entire space. Lyra stood in the doorway and felt her throat tighten. This was what they'd built from ash, what they'd created together. It's perfect, she said. Alistair came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. We did good work. We did. She leaned back against him. Your mother would be proud. I think she would be proud of you. You're the one who made this happen. We made it happen, together. They stood like that for a while, just absorbing the space. Then Alistair shifted. There's something I want to show you, he said. He led her to the far wall, to a section of shelving that looked identical to all the others except for a small plaque mounted at eye level. The Lyra Vale Memorial Collection. In honor of courage, resilience, and the woman who taught a blind man to see. Lyra's breath caught. Alistair. Oh. What? I've been collecting books, he said. First editions, rare volumes, things I thought you'd love. It's not finished yet. I'm still hunting down a few pieces, but I wanted you to have something that was entirely yours, a space in this library that belongs to you alone. Tears built behind Lyra's eyes. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, because you gave me everything. My estate back, my purpose, my... He stopped, took a breath. My ability to trust again. And I wanted to give you something in return, something that shows how much you matter. I don't need grand gestures to know I matter. I know, but I wanted to give you one anyway. He pulled her close. You saved me, Lyra. In every way a person can be saved, and I spend every day trying to be worthy of that. You are worthy. You always were. You just couldn't see it. Because I was too busy seeing my limitations, my blindness, my... He laughed bitterly. My conviction that being broken meant being unlovable. But you looked at all my jagged edges and decided I was worth keeping anyway. You're not broken. You're human. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Broken implies you can't function, that you need fixing. But you function perfectly well. You run an estate, navigate a world that wasn't designed for you. You just do it differently than other people. Lyra cupped his face.
And that's not weakness, that's adaptation. It's strength. Alistair's eyes closed. When he opened them again, they were wet. I love you, he said, more than I have words for, more than I thought I was capable of. I love you too. Even when you're impossible, even when you push me away, even when... He kissed her, deep and slow, like they had all the time in the world. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Lyra rested her forehead against his. Merry Christmas, she whispered. Merry Christmas, Nats.
The spring brought news from London. Lady Morrison had died over the winter. Pneumonia, according to reports. Her estate went to a distant cousin who promptly sold it and moved to the continent, one less enemy in the aristocracy. Lord Pemberton wrote to congratulate them on the library. He'd heard about the reconstruction through mutual acquaintances and wanted to visit when the weather improved. Several other members of the peerage expressed similar interest. Slowly, carefully, Blackthorn's reputation was being rebuilt. The scandal of Caroline's crimes had faded into gossip. The fire had become a tragedy they'd overcome rather than a mark against them. And Lyra, the girl who'd been sold into marriage, was now known as the Duchess, who'd saved her husband's life and rebuilt half an estate from nothing. Respect, it turned out, could be earned even by those who started with nothing. Margaret announced her engagement in April. To a young scholar she'd met during the school reconstruction, a man with more education than money, but a good heart and genuine affection for Lyra's sister. They planned to marry in the summer and move to Oxford, where he'd accepted a teaching position. Are you sure? Lyra asked when Margaret told her. You don't have to rush into anything. You can stay here as long as you need. I know, but I want this. He's kind. He listens, and he doesn't see me as broken or traumatized or someone who needs saving. Margaret smiled. He just sees me. Lyra understood that better than anyone. The wedding was small, just family and close friends gathered in Blackthorn's garden. Margaret wore a simple white gown and looked radiant. Her groom looked terrified and hopeful in equal measure. Lyra watched them exchange vows and felt something settle in her chest. Margaret would be all right. She'd found her path, her choice, just like their father had wanted. After the ceremony, after the guests had eaten and danced and departed, Lyra found Alistair in the library. He was reading, fingers moving across braille pages with practiced ease. What are you reading? She asked. Poetry. Keats. I thought I should familiarize myself with the Romantic poets. See what all the fuss is about. Lyra smiled. And? It's maudlin, overwrought, obsessed with death and beauty in equal measure. He set the book aside. I understand why people love it. She settled into the chair beside him. Margaret looked happy today. She did. Your father would be proud of both of you. I hope so. Lyra was quiet for a moment. Then, do you ever regret it? Marrying me? Alistair turned toward her, his unseeing eyes finding hers with that unnerving precision. Every day. Her breath caught. I regret that we met the way we did, he continued. I regret that I was cruel to you, that I pushed you away when you needed support, that I wasted months being stubborn and afraid when I could have been... He stopped, smiled slightly. When I could have been falling in love with you sooner. You weren't ready sooner. Neither were you. We needed time to become people who could actually sustain a partnership, time to shed our armor and learn to trust. And now I regret nothing. Not the struggle, not the pain, not even Caroline, because fighting her taught us how to fight together. He reached for her hand. I'd do it all again, every hard moment, every mistake, because they led here. To you. To us. Lyra felt tears building. You've gotten very articulate about your feelings. I've had a good teacher. He pulled her onto his lap. And I've learned that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the only thing that makes strength worth having. She kissed him, soft and lingering. I love you. I know, you tell me every day. And I'll keep telling you, until you believe it completely. I believe it. His arms tightened around her. I believed it for months. I just like hearing you say it. They sat like that as the sun set through the library windows, as the light bled gold and orange across the rebuilt shelves, as the shadows grew long and the day slipped into evening. This was peace, hard-won, fragile, but real. And Lyra had learned something crucial during the past year. Peace wasn't the absence of struggle. It was the presence of someone worth struggling with, Someone who'd stand beside you when the world caught fire and help you rebuild from the ashes. Someone who saw you, really saw you, even when they couldn't see at all. 5 years later. Lyra stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching Alistair with their daughter. Catherine was 3, all wild dark curls and her father's gray eyes. She sat in Alistair's lap while he read to her in Braille, his fingers moving across the page while he described the pictures she'd want to see. And then the dragon said. Alistair paused dramatically. "What do you think the dragon said, Catherine?" "Fire!" their daughter shouted gleefully. "Big fire! Very big fire! The biggest fire anyone had ever seen!" Catherine squealed with delight. Lyra smiled, her hand resting on the swell of her stomach. 6 months pregnant with their second child. A boy this time, according to the physician. Not that it mattered. Boy or girl, this child would be loved beyond measure, just like Catherine. Just like the entire messy, complicated family they'd built. Margaret visited twice a year from Oxford, usually with her husband and their twin sons in tow. The boys were terrors, 4 years old and convinced they could climb anything, but sweet beneath the chaos. They called Alistair Uncle Duke and treated Blackthorn like their personal adventure playground. The estate thrived. The tenants prospered. The school Margaret had designed became a model for surrounding villages. A community center that served everyone regardless of age or status. Lyra ran it with the same ruthless efficiency she applied to everything else, and Alistair had learned to simply get out of her way when she had a project in motion. They fought sometimes, sharp, vicious arguments that dredged up old wounds and forced them to confront the ways they still struggled to trust. But they always came back together, always found their way through the anger to the understanding beneath. Because that was what marriage was. Not the absence of conflict, but the commitment to work through it, to choose each other even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. "Mama," Catherine spotted her. "Mama, come hear the dragon." Lyra crossed to them, settling on the floor beside Alistair's chair. Catherine immediately climbed into her lap, chattering about dragons and fire and brave knights. Alistair's hand found Lyra's shoulder, squeezed once. "I love you," the gesture said. She covered his hand with hers. "I love you too." Later, after Catherine was asleep and the house had settled into quiet, Lyra and Alistair walked through the library, their evening ritual, checking on the space they'd built together, making sure everything was in order. "Mrs. Pemberton donated another 50 volumes today," Lyra said. "Her late husband's collection. First editions, mostly. I think we should put them in the history section." "Good. We were running low on Tudor-era material." Alistair ran his fingers along a shelf. "And the lending program?" "Expanding. We've had requests from 3 more villages. I think we need to start a mobile library, something that can travel to areas too remote to visit regularly." "That's ambitious." "So was rebuilding half an estate. We managed that." Alistair smiled. "Fair point. Draft a proposal and we'll review it together." They'd reached the far wall. The Lyra Vale Memorial Collection had grown substantially. Rare volumes on agriculture, medicine, education, books that reflected not just Lyra's interests but her impact on the estate and surrounding community. "You've changed this place," Alistair said quietly. "Made it better than it was." "We changed it. Together." "No, you changed it. I just stopped getting in your way." He turned to face her. "When you arrived, Blackthorn was dying. I was dying. Too proud to ask for help. Too afraid to let anyone close. And then you showed up, sold into marriage, terrified, completely unprepared, and somehow you saved all of it. I didn't save anything alone. Maybe not. But you started it. You were brave enough to fight when I wanted to surrender. Strong enough to stand when I wanted to hide. And you taught me..." His voice roughened. "You taught me that being seen isn't the same as being vulnerable. That letting someone in doesn't make you weak. That love, real love, isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to show up even when you're broken." Lyra's throat tightened. "We were both broken. We still are, in different ways. But we're broken together now. And somehow that makes it bearable." She stepped into his arms, felt them close around her, safe, steady, home. "I was so angry when Caroline sold me to you," she said. "I thought my life was over, that I'd spend the rest of my days trapped in a loveless marriage with a man who saw me as nothing more than a means to an end. And now, Now I can't imagine being anywhere else, with anyone else. She looked up at him. You gave me a purpose, a home, a family. You gave me the chance to become someone who matters. You always mattered. You just needed someone to see it. And you needed someone to prove you were worth seeing. Alistair smiled. I suppose we saved each other then. I suppose we did. They stood in the library they'd rebuilt together, surrounded by books and memories, and the quiet proof that broken things could be mended if you cared enough to try. Outside, night had fallen. Stars emerged one by one across the sky, constant and patient, like they'd been waiting all along for two damaged people to find their way to each other. In the morning, there would be work, estate business and tenant meetings, and 1,000 small decisions that kept Blackthorn running. There would be Catherine's boundless energy and the coming baby's needs and all the beautiful chaos of a life fully lived. But tonight, there was just this. Two people who'd started as strangers became enemies and somehow, impossibly, became partners, lovers, family. Two people who'd learned that the hardest battles weren't fought with swords or strategies, but with trust, with vulnerability, with the courage to let someone see your worst parts and believe they'd stay anyway. Lyra had been sold to a blind duke everyone said was a monster, a man who couldn't see her face, who'd told her on their wedding night that she meant nothing, who'd pushed her away with both hands while secretly pulling her closer. And she'd refused to disappear, had fought and survived and built something beautiful from the wreckage of their circumstances. She was a duchess now, a mother. The woman who'd rebuilt Blackthorn from ash and taught its duke that darkness wasn't the same as blindness. But more than any of that, more than the titles or the estate or the legacy they were creating, she was loved, wholly, fiercely, by a man who'd learned to see with more than eyes. And in the end, that was worth more than all the rest combined. Alistair kissed her forehead. Come to bed. You need rest. In a moment, I want to stay here a little longer. Then I'll stay with you. And he did. Because that's what they did now, stayed. Even when it was hard. Even when it would have been easier to walk away. They stayed. They chose each other, every single day. And that, Lyra thought, as she leaned against her husband in the library they'd built together, that was what home really meant. Not a place, not a building or an estate or even a family name. Home was the person who saw your scars and loved you anyway, who stood beside you when the world burned and helped you rebuild from the ashes. Home was choosing and being chosen in return. Home was this, and she was finally, blessedly, home. The end. Thank you for watching this journey from beginning to end. Lyra and Alistair's story proves that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to fight for each other even when everything falls apart. Drop a comment telling us what part moved you most, and don't forget to like this video if their story touched your heart. From all of us here, thank you for being part of this tale of survival, redemption, and love that refused to die.